Tanek Ulapaka Elit Kosam Angalali Chumagati Inuit Hamatarikabut Atanek Damat Pilotana Hublugi Wamptingun Kuyanakpak.
Colleagues, before we begin, I'd like to recognize former President of the Nitat-Kuchin Council.
Isagod gala kata Joseph Kernakowski lichakilla kolgit kiga ilifingnyun. Kuyanakpak February una okauchip tabra uvlogem tatrakhiutige maung una tabra kuat ukauchit nalo inyune agotit tabra elokanyek atawlugit mani Northwest Territories mi okautigid lalit kitka tabra lotait na okauchak putin na pinyaka na piarman mani nunapting ni kuyanakpak tabra kuat kuyak paulit kitka ukuat mumiktit chiriwat inipetun tabra una atchitkingat mani una hibunniakovik tabra ukuat na tamat kuat isimagibligit kanokinyuni ako hibut mani nunaptingni tabra una atchitkigli kikput una negrun mik atchahulugo kuyanakpak una Madam Madsen damna kuyak palit kitka tabra una na okauchip tingnun nuktichuklu tabra damna ili una tatkakhiun okauchip tatkakhiu tiginyak mau tamat kuan tangungit chuat mani Northwest Territories me pigo matkungilit kitka ili chukit kulit kitka nagaluni ili matkulit kitka una minihitangat ili haktat pingahuni ubluni tabra kuat ili chukilat kubluit na kanok tamani Northwest Territories ni NWT mi kanok inyune aktot tabra lutay na tunagalan tamat ko habaktot kan na ili chukip karali chaktut kanok tamat ko nga ikayuin niya aktot tigun ikayuin niya kapta tamat ko nga tabra tayo na ataramik tayo na angalat kulit kitka mat ko alo tabra himmahaktalit kahit $500 tunin na kinyawanik ay chulat lilit kahit tamat ko alo tawak tayo na iglumingnik akiliw niya aktot tabra tayo na iglungit nakingit kanakulo inyune ako tikrangit tamat ko nga tabra kanyak to aklugit na kamilare aklugit ilitso kanya aklugit tabra kuat habak tibta nalo inyune ako tingit inyune ako ningit tamat ko ilitso kanya aklugit igilun 363 tun na inuit tamani tuat tabra lutay naptawak ilangit matkot kawamakaktot kawamatigunin na inyune aktut tabra lutay naptawak litso kabligit matkot na ay papagkanok angalachi nikput ilitso kabkani akluwa una tabra tam na ilitso kaptigoy na kanok tabra tam na himmahaktakputin na 19 to 59 mo naglanit na tabra tayo na kanok angalat sihuro tayo na tunaglan kanakulo tayo na kanatun akiliw Akiyuhiarmatut kipilaqtut tamatkuatin na havangitsuatit tamatkunangay kayuartinin kiinyauranik pilaqartuat. Tavraptauq matkuat manna nutaaq isagutikaptigu qanututtauq tamanna iliitsaqivligu qanu manna iñuuniaqaniq maani na akihuisuaq. Akihuipiaqtuq tamanna iñuuniaqaniq maani iñuuniaqtuat ilitsuqikkavut. Tavraptauq taitna mat pingahuttit na malaqutaliatit na pigiñiaqlugit.
Proposing to increase the amount of monthly income that can be earned.
Tavraptauq matkua itna $200 min $500 tunitna taitna tunagalanit ilitsoqaniaqlugit qanuq manna iñuuniaqanikput maani akitsoqmat tamatkuat qagivlugi. Tamatkualu na qanuqinniaqutiksrangitit tamatkualu taitna $500 tun itna taitna tavra taitna tunagalan tamani itna kiinyauranik atoqtuat $1,200 tun itna kiinyauranik taitna atuaqaranginnik taitna illiqinaqaliitsugut. Tamatkualu tavra qagivlugit utoqqanaat at utoqqanaat qanutunagalanit na kiinyauranik itna ilangit havaktuat huli tavra tamatkuatit sumagaliitkivut pangmapak. Taitnalu tavra tamatkuat taitna tunagalan itna tahamna qutsikilgitkat qanutunagalan tamatkuat itna matkuat tavra income tax kiinyauranik itna utaqtussihurut kavavanu tamanna tavra pigiñiangitkat pangmapaktaamna piirniaqaat. Tamatkualu tavra taitna qanuq taitna tavra tamatkuatit na ilitsoqaniaqtavut taitna ilitsoqikaptigit tavra tamatkuatit na himmaaqarniaqligitkivut quyanarpak. Unaptauq qanniaqtualiqiriñi miñihitaq tavrauna ilihmarugut maani qanutun agilaan tamatkuatit na taimaaq niaqtuat hapeqlapiaqtaqtut maani nunaptingni NWT-mi tavra taitna ilitsoqikkavut na aipaangaqanga uqarihaqataaqqikkaptigu tavra taitna ituthuli. 19th Assembly mi uvani hivunniuq pauraqaming tamatkuat tavra taitna pigu malaitkait tamatkuatit nalut ikayorniaqtating itna aikpata ikayutiksranginnik isumaalukpaktugut huli. Tavraptauq taitna 2022 tavra taamna ilitsoqit qavlugut tamatkununga kavamauruanun qutsiktuani kavamatit na ilitsoqit qavlugit qanuquniaqtilaaksranginnik na ikayoqlugit qanuutiksranginnik. Taitnalu tavra tamatkuat isumagipkaqtillugit itnalu havauttaqipkaqtillugit tavra taitna tamatkuat kavamatit na piigumat qungillugit tamatkualu ilitsoqit qavlugit takpavani kavamani qutsiktuani federal government pilaqigait qutsiktuani kavamaqaqtuat. Tavrauna uvlupak taitna tamanna qanuq illiqiniaqtunga itna uqaaniaqiga nugu qanuqlu tamatkuatit na ilitsoqiniaqtat qanutunagalaan kiinyauranik atoqtilaating pilaqigait tamatkualu ilitsoqiniaqapta tavra taitna taimak nimikit na takpavungay na mamitsareak to di kayo hluit tabrisi matigipiakibut pang mapak. Tabralutay na tamat ko di naptawak ikayo tikrangit. Mani nunangin na inyune ako hingit ikayo tigihukulugit. Tay na tamat ko isimaluktot nagalunin isumaktot ikayo hulugit. Tabralutay na tamat ko ilyakenik tu tamat ko nga. Kanok tabralo tawak tamat ko piwo mangit kibutay na inyune ako tingit mani nunapting ni. Tabralo tawak tay na kanok lo tamat ko na inyune ako inaurani. Ikayo tikrangin nik isitsakip kaktakibot. Tabralo tam naptawak tabra piwo mangin mikput. Kanok ikayo tamat ko na ikayo inyakto tamat ko nga. Ikayo niyakibot. Tabralo tawak tay na kanok niyak tilakrangit tamat ko na kanutikrangit ikayo tikun. Tamat ko tay na ikayo inyakto kaurirod inyong nik. Tay na tay mala niyak tuanik na tanganik. Nagalunin aldanik hunik tay mala niyak taktot. Tabralo tamat ko na ilihimarot na ilitsyoke himarot tay na hinik. Tabralo kayo tabralo tay na ptawak isumalut takikik putam na kanok inikrangat tay na ikayo inyaktot tay na luptawak tay na ptawak tabra. Ikayo huluit tamat ko tay malak inyaktot. Tabralo tap ko na ilihimagibot na kihiming tay na nanginritsut isumalungitsut. Nalu tamat ko nutakakit na taputirarigay tay na isumalo na kaming nagaluni tay malak niya kaming. Ilokanyik tay na taputirarigay. Kaya nakpak. Hunap tawak kauklek okalang nektok. Kaya nakpak kakti. Tabraw na. Tabrap tawak ko na kawamat Northwest Territories ni matko Inuit mani territorial na mani nunapting ni inyune aktuat. Tabralutay na tamat ko tabray ilit hagabekait ikayo tikret mani mga Northwest Territories kabamangan ni. Tabraluptak tamat ko tabra mani nunapting ni Northwest Territories ni. Inuit habaw takik kabut pigo mangit kibut isimagigibut tay na kayo hulugit. Tabralo tay na ilaniptaw hapukut salyaka hapukut takaragait tamat ko na kayo niyakaptigit inuit ikakaklugo man na nunagput. Man na Northwest Territories mi kabamaurot. Tabraptak tay na ikayo tikraka kami tay na 19 kaya mani Northwest Territories ni inaurani ito at nagaluni inini. Tabraluptak kakahawar tigo nilitsakap kalitsut tamat kunim nga. Tamat ko dilitsakit kabulugit kanok ikayo tikrat ikayutik siya at kanut nagalaan tayo na ilitsakip ka kanayakluwit. Kanakulo tayo na ikayutik ramin nik ibaklektot. Hunik, hurakaw timing nik o kautik kabulugot aptung kakihawar o kakti. Tabralo tayo naptawak tayo na ito nagalaan tabraya ni tamat ko atin ingmik tigun. Tabraptawak ingmik tigun na habakak to atin na ikayo kluwit. Tabrelo kating tayo na isuatun tayo na aulat kabulugit tamat koding miktigun haba kakanektuat. Mani Northwest Territories me. Tabrelo kating tabre tayo na hapakrakto dila na kanohit nagaluni kihutin na ikayonek tila kraming nik ibakleraktot nakin lekha nagaluni tabre ilan ni. Tamat ko tabre pakit sila katakakto tamat ko na ni pakit sinakto tamat ko nang kakeharanin ilitsakip kahihurugot. Tabre tayo na tunagalan tabre akukto din na pinyak tuat pehauting pinyak tuat kuya nakpak. Great living. O kuya nak ublupak. Ublumi. Tabra kuya. Mani tabra Northwest Territories ni. Tabra ukwat. Ilokanyag 11 tun ukaw chitin na. Ilitsokigait matkwat mga kabamaruagut. Northwest Territories ni. Tabra ukaw chibut. Ilokata tayo na ataramik tayo na atok tinneak lugo. O kautsak po tabra ataramik tayo na huli. Hibunarigik po tam na. O kautsak po pigo matkong lugo. Ilitsakit kabulugi tamat ko at o kautsip tingnik. Yalo na ipmiptok tayo na tinaglantok tabra inyo na ako tik mingyit. Na hagabektut inuit na ilitsakip kanya lahirut mani yalonait mi. Tabrap tao kilat ni dait na himmaw herok kalwarigait alanik na pinyaroklu. Tabralo dait na tunagalan dait na. Tabrap tao dait na tunagalan tabra inuitin na mani tayo na tamat ko nga ang may nakaligitsud. Tabrap daw kanuto nagalan tao hekamali piliguni nga na ilitsokip kalaw kaya. Tabralo tamat ko at yalo na mi na MLA guro at na lo kanolo tayo na isumati kangat na negawak taunek. Tabra kawamani ubagut. Tabra ilokata tayo na tabrap tao king miktigun tao kinyunek kemarut tamani inyunek to ting miktigo kemarut. Tabrap tao tayo na tunaglan kuya nakpay. Tabrap tao tamat ko at kuya parlit kit ka tamat ko at mumiktichirit nagalunin tapitaw rot. Kuya nakakakti. February 15 me. The CRTC tabrap tamat ko at tayo na ilitsakap ka ilitsut tayo na nalaw titigun. Tabralo tayo na tam na titakting na kanok isamalu takiligit ka at kanokolo tayo na tao. Tamat ko at tao tabra mani hibun niyok titit na tam na CRTC isumagiligin migat. Tabralo tayo na kanokolo tamani Canada mi kanok titaw tikraming nyik tabra Anichillahim magaita. Tabraluptak CRTC mi tabratamat ko din nakatimaringit. Mani Northwest Territories ni. Tabrahibulak mi umani. Una August 2019 mi tabratam na ilyakiligit tap taminga. Na tap ko nga okalahit kabulugo CRTC kon. Tabraptak tamat ko malakok ka cabin radio na nalautit cabin radio magpinakikatan itun nalaw tingit. Tabra tayo na luptaw na alagi huting tamat koptaw kutsil hakto na nalaw ta kaktut. Tabra luptaw tayo na Yellowknife me. Malong niukyung ni tayo na ukakti. Tabra luptaw tayo na tap kwa na ataramik nalaw titigun na kutsuktuani atok to tabraptaw tamat ko na mikigalwak tilugu nalaw ti ani chinyak tabru na nalaw titigun tabra atiruk rakalwak tap ko tabra ko CRTC kut tabra kanako na yaktilakangit nagaluni ukaktuat ataramik tap ko tayo na angat na kangakilahit kabulugit tayo na ukaktu tabraptak tayo na atiruk tap ko ukauch nalaw titigun ukaktu ko yan nakpak sa batchamin ukakti
home to some of the oldest school infrastructure in all of the NWT. Not only that, but Fort Smith is also home to 3 buildings with a residential school legacy, and all of them are still active in use today. The 3 buildings I'm referring to are PWK High School, JBT Elementary School, and Brennan Hall at Aurora College. To be perfectly clear, all of these structures are either former residential schools.
Tamat ko it kagilang nilit ka. Tamat at ulumikihan iliharak takto at nagalunin ay mabingin yan tabrang ay mabingin yan alamon na awlaw tiblugit tayo naptok una 60 una inyuk 65 ton. Tabrak tayo na tamat ko at kamamatay na ang alat si hakata kaming tamat ko ni nga iliharak takto nun tamanga awlak tilugit ay mabingin yun. Ay mabingin yun pek lugit alamon iliharak titaktat. 1971 may October tayo na ublumi iliharak takto at isaguhin maligitsut tayo na ataramik tabraluptak tamat ko tap ko na isumati blugi kilokang niki ay ulimi ilakayak takto nagalunin ay mabangin yin piyak lugit na ilakayak takto tangit.
Know that both systems caused a lot of damage.
Tabratap ko na piaklugit na isamangit alangok lugit pigait kuya nakpak alat nagaktungit pan nga o kapal lang niyaktunga tabraw na ako likra ko na o kautigil lang niya 55-62 nito at tamat ko tabratay na tabralutay na tawak tamat ko at kaba maurot mo ni na kaudilaw kit ka malawang niukyong ni tabralu NWT mi tayo na sumati kakpot tabra kauti kangat tuwag ka South slave mi tawak tayo na inyuniaktot nagalunin ilikayak taktot tamat ko tabra sumati kabulugitin nalo kauti kabulugitin kanok ikayuti krangin niya ilitsurit kabulugit tabra tamat ko huli pang mapagtay na alangong itsudit na hurakauti ngit kay nalo habaw takangit kay tap ko to kauti kakanyak lugit tabra una no payaro apekruta kakirunga isiyan imun minhitangan nun hear about me kaya nako kakti Tabra na. Tabra ko kaya panigaw na anibilit siya kaya parlit kaya pang mapag. Tabra tao ko na March 2 may naglan 5 mo naglan tabra tap to manipirak para kalichut. Tabra tao tayo na tam na ilitsarirak put upinakakakilit ka hila nakukakilit siya. Tabra tamat ko din na tamat ko nga pirak ti chikaming here over me. Tabra ilang Inuit na kuya hula to tamat ko nga pirak to ni kinikto kaya ako ting. Tabra taman na kuya giblu tayo na una ko kakatakiligin man hilak put kuya giblu tayo na ako ting pirak chirak to ti over me. Tabra tayo na tao na tamat ko nga Queen Miglo King Miglo na tayo na akiman elektronik akiman elektronik tamat ko nga tayo na sagutilichut pang mapag. Tabra tayo na ilokan tam na ublo parliw tuniyo kay hilichut tao na ni kung mi. Tabra ublami kutsak ti chinalichut hilabyang nik. Tayo na taramig ublo parliw tap tuman tap ko na ni ublo parliw tayo na tuniyo kay hilichut. Tabra kan. Tabra na tayan kuya parlit kaya tayo na tamat ko nga isagutira kaligin man. Tabra 41st kivulir mi tayo na tunaglan tayo na tabra tam na pirak ti chinyalichut. Tabra ilokahi tayo na kahit ko gifi. Kaya hong niyak to nga kara kaya nakpak. Kaya over south. Mampermin. Kaya nakakakti. Tabra na iglulakiro din na kamamauro ko din na kayo magaytap ko. Kricho mi tabra iglulakiro. Tabra tayo na tunagalan. Tabra tayo na inyugekto din na igilokak din niya kalawakay. Tagalan tayo na ilokan at lugutam na inawrak. Igilokak din rin kahit tamat ko at igiluilyok tutuli. Tabra tayo na tunagalanin na kanok kamamatin na malakaw talengit isumagibasla kulay kungit kalawakit ka na tamat ko na unip ka nalo kanokin na inyunek to din na nutagurot nutakatin na nutakawit kalawakit nutakatin na inyalat kaya tamat ko tabertay na hapasrakak tut inyunek vikraming nik iglukraming nik 27FEB mi tamat ko din na 27FEB pinakigati ko tamat ko nga igilukrangin nik ubago di sumalong itsugot tabra tayo na tunaglan tayo na tabra igilukrangin nik nalok kehuak tugut nani inyunek tirakrangit tabra tayo na tam apekrutar niya kaya tamat ko at ilihawrinig niya minitak kuyanak okakti kuyanak tabra ukwat ilihimaruhi mani kanuto nagalan ikayo nakakayait ma Canada mi Northwest Territories ni. Tabralo tayo na nutakara ni na unitsakiraktod pag-ibig rangin niya na sumalugtod tayo na ikakakluman na. 1997. Tabralo tayo na ikayo niya ako tingin na pag-ibig rami na pakilitsod tabralo ni. Tabralo tayo na tabralo mingik akiliblutik. Akilibluting tayo na pag-ibig ramon ilyakiraki kot. Tabralo tayo na ilyakiraki tayo na sumatigiblu tam na. Kanakolo tayo na ikayo inyaktot tayo na isumagirakrakaloangit matkot ilihakayaktaktot kanot nagalan kinyaronik pirakakaningit. Tabralo matkot na ilihimarugot. Kanakolo matkot na ilihimarugot kanot nagalan mani inyuniyaktot na pag-ibig raming niki bakalakaktot. NWT mi. Tabralo mani Yellowknife mi pag-ibig 2018 $4 million dun tayo na tunagalan kinyaronik tayo na atok himaro tam na napakhimania kami dun. 308 dun tabralo tayo na tunagalan na ikakakluman na Northwest Territories ni tabralo tamat ko din na sumalugiligid kahit kanok tamat tayo na munakari niyaktot pag-iri niyaktonik inyong nagulunin tamat ko ni nga igilokak tukran mik isumaluligid chut mani Northwest Territories ni. Tam na tayo pigo mangidikit ka tam na kanok munakari niyaktot tamat ko ni nga makayayanik habaktuan ni ang yokhan ko yan nakpak. Yellowknife Northman. O kalalang niyak tok. Tabraw na pekrot. Apakrot takakto ding niyak doon na kanok tamat ko nuna. Tamat ko nga nunanik na kanok atutigiran kanok lugi tamat ko hurakanak tilakrang ito tamat ko apakirut takanakit ka. O kakti? Tabralo tamat ko na. Tabralo tayo na angunayak to at isumalugilin mit ka pangmapak. O kakti? Tabralo ko dilokatay na malong nikin na inyuniyak nikun apakirut takilang niyakatam na. Tamat ko na nunangit ing miktigon angunayak to at tayo na alagik tukukok umani nunapting ni inyuniyak wing ni nunat apaniptaw kaulakak to at nunangat nangunayak to at. Tabraw ko na tao to kimahong naka dili tsoke hong nakaptak tayo na apakirut taka kafe ni tayo mau na apakirut taka bigo. Tabralo tam na alangok tilagluwin na kanokonak tilakrangat tam na kanokonak tilakrangat di tsoke hupiak titap ko tabre habaw takikat ka. Tabrap tayo na kanakoting tukubisranig na isimalong mute ilangit tamat ko din na yung miktigutaw ka nunakaktot nunakakanaktot tabrap tamat ko tayo isimalong imigay kanok tukubigit kabuluting kayanakpat. Yellowknife Norman. Nahandamin. Kaya na ako kakti. Tabraw na pero una Kuya hali chunga tabra una annibiligto kuya hutin annibigtulla tagma nakayaktu ting pakrak kuya nakpak tabra law kuatay na atokone atuti atokarakaniaktot nagaluni tamat kuatin na kanok takaleorniaktit inyuga kilichu tamat kuatin na tangungit chot takilaumit tabra lu tay na tunaw tay na tabra mani na hanimi na kinyawa tuni na kanok tamat kuat takalet igun kinyawa ni kismalu lichu tamat kuatin na kanok lo tamat kuatin na Vancouver miptak tay na atokawrakaktot nagaluni na takalet igun na ilichakap kaktitalit kay tamani kanok lo tabra Los Angeles mi tabra tay na tangungit siya tay na takaliwlin yakot tabra lo tay na tam na tay na tabra tamat kuninga na tabra lo tay na tabra tamat kuninga na kilaw ra kaming tay na tamat ko di suma isit kagirakagay kanok umatibutin na homahek tuatun nagaluni na kuya huktuatin na isumatigirakagay tay na tabra lo tay na takaliok tabra Fort Simpson mi tabra tay na inyugek tuatin na katutibuluting tay na ikayutibiliting takaliok taktot kuya nakpak
Member statements. Member for Inuvialuktun Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
kuya nakwakakte tabrauna Bennett for James Bennett for tabratam na taimalaktuak aklabing mi Animarok 1951 mi James Ben and Ranford Lo tabra talimatim ma inyuru tuli tabra malong ni ihubul gay tap ko ka malong ni ukyung ni tabra tam na habanaguti ni ahin apanga habanaguti rak tabrunga huamaro tigunin na tabra lo tay na kanok inyugek to ni ay papagtay na James tabra tam na kuya para kay Elizabeth tam na tabra ilan ni kay larak tutaw tigalablugo tabra Fort McPherson mi na tabra lo tay na kay na tabra tay na tamat ko di na iliharake Fort Smith mon tamat ko tay na takpabunga Alberta mo tan Northwest tell me ahitay tabra ni habanagutilgilyo ni tabra na habag paura ko ra kay papagtay na lo tabra for Verna Hansen tabra par nakatap 1976 mi ay tamat malong ni yutak Bradley lo Jackson lo tabra 8 nik tuti chakaktuk tabra inubing mi tabra ni kauklim chief nik pirakagay tay na tabra inyu na nagutirok tap tay na tap nga tabra lo tay na akanyi tabra lo tay na habag paurak kemarok 1992 mi tay na iliatam ko tin na ang ngakani ako tingid nunap tigun tabra lo tay na lo Tabra tayo na kanut naglanday na ay papagtay na habag tabaw ti magay tapkot. Tamatkot ilan eh. Tabra ilong New William Ventura, Willie Firth, Johnny Chew, John Edward Snowshoe, and B. Jerome Tawk. Tabra ilan nip Tawk, tabra Tawk, tamani inyune. Ematik lichare beara. Tabra ila ikayo ko ga nan khiyalugaya na keman. Khiyalugaya mata tabra ikayo para ko ga. Tabra Tawk Midway Lake Midway Lake mun na la kami gin na piurakton na tokarakton. Ikayo tap ko nga magtaka kublugit inuit tabra Tawk malok tapkok malok tuti changik tabra ikayo na takpabungo tayo na nangak tuti nakigay tumula ka. Tabra lutay na ilihimagat na tabra nyugekto tamani ikayok parak himagay. Tabra ko pikang tabra kanok na ikayok na kagatin inyugekto nakandigun na aula kami na piramin ang uramin ikayo na kagay. Nagalunin habati ko tapat ko tabra litsare. Tabra Tawk tamat ko na ikayo ko na kagay tamat ko nutak na inyalat nagalunin ikayo kagay tabo nga nalikwalay chok itkilit nagalunin yipet nagalunin tangong itsuanik. Tabra kayo iraktut. Tabra kot nalurut pang mapak. Tabra ikayo fala nga. Ikayo faulo nga pihuk kalok to nga nalurut matkod no takkatin na hutil nakihutil laming yik. 17 tayo na tata nga. Tabra kot tatlet kutsin Tawk tamat kodin na chief kakurut. Tabra guwak tatang Tawk tabra tamat ko na ni habag kemarok. Tabra lutay na ilihimag ka nga tabra kanut nagalanin na nekadutit nagalunin. Tabra o kakatigimig kang nutak kani. Tabra tamat tayo na. Tabra tayo na ito nagalat. Kanakulo tayo na inyo na ako timikap o kauti kangit. O kauti himag kangit. Tabra nahimon mun kihiya ni kaulata. Tabra kuyak paralitit ka, nutakat ka. Tabra ilo kata. Kuya nakpak kati mo na alwe. Matkod pulaktot ilitsarilla neribut nagaluni tamani tamat ko na apakita kakpata.
Problem. Member recognition of visitors in the gallery. Member for Inuvialuktun Lakes.
I needed a moment, Mr.
Tabra na tuwa katigay na ilitsarilla ko tuwa katiga mani itok nalagtok aktok. Sa Batchamin. Kuya na ko kakte. June 2021. Apakrok kemagiga ECN namin yung hitarok. Tabra na apahrutake lang ni Ali Tiga 2005 me 22 ukiuni na tabranganin o apahrutake higat.
Soon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Thabacha, Minister responsible for Education, Culture and Employment.
Kaya nako kakti. 2005 mi tabertam na o kakadlakakput. Tabertam na
by the Department of Infrastructure in August of 2022. These assessments are not
August 22, 2022 mi tabertam tapkot o kakahimagkangit. Kaya na. June 2021. Minihitam-tam na o kakadlang mikanga. Tabertay na ilihaktolo. Ilihaktolo tamat ko di sa mga bluit. Tabertay na. Tabertay na. Ay na himaw hermagan. Kanawalutay na ilihaktotay na. Tay na isumagi nibluit pikang ini. Tabertay na kanak tap tuma na ilihakabium. Tabertay na. Tabertay na tamat ko din na hawak pangnik na minihitaw rotin na taman nagkihiming angalat sila rotap tuminga. Kaya nak. Sa Batchamin. Kaya nakpak kokakti. ECE kakuguit na tunagalan. Tabertay na taman na tahit na himaw kaku himaw niya parang tam na iglo. Ili himawit. O kaya nak. 2002 mi. Taberkot 2015, 2020 million ni. Tabertam tapkot din na isang material o haluit. Taberkot 2035. Nagaluni hukahi kilamek piakto to na pigalak din na. Tabra ilo katay may putam na kafe niyo kiunitay na may putay na ito. Kaya nak. Sabat kami. Ako lang pakita nga. Tabra na ilihakawik o kakadlag mikaka. Kada ito naglahanin na ilihimay tamat ko din na kanok yellow knife me. Tabertay na tinagan 45 to nukyuni na napak himarok. Hekamitangat tabrahin ilihakawik siya liyo hoting. Tabertay na himaw hilabarungun na ilihakawik. Kuya na kakakti. Isianin. Kuya na. Taberkot ili sarap ka na kati ko tuma. Habak pakti yun minihitaw lang. Tay na luto tamat ko din na kanok ikayo lang magaita nagalunin suakri lang magaita kanito nagalan tay na tinagalan iso kakota tamat ko din na kanok luto tay na atok tilangat Tap ko Inuvialuktun. Here without me. Kaya okakte. Tamat ko Dr. Bailey tsura himagibot. Tamat ko ay na mikidot nutakat. Tabalu tayo na akraliak pagkon tayo na ilihakayak takaktut. Kanito naglaan pang mapak tayo na huli awla tigi basong. Unaptaok tabalu tayo na tunagalaan wago tayo na munakakaktut tamat ko nga. Taba DEA. Tap ko taba katimaringi ha. Tam na habaw takilagat. Kaya Here without. Kaya tamat ko at malakatala dilyan Ilani malong ni nagalaktanik ukallagaktut. Tabalu tayo na tabalu tayo na katimaringi ha tayo na anglat sa dapat kihiming naga matkop tayo tamat ko akraliga paitin na ilihakak takamataki tamat ko na awla ringit ilani tayo na yung miktiw tayo kilangit tayo na hinig pas nagpirakigay tayo na hinig nutakkanik agralarot utik tayo tibiligit lihakaya kabingin yan. Kaya nakpak. Riverside. Kaya nakakakte.
Responsible for the safety of those persons using student busing? Is it the department, the DEA, or the busing contractor? Thank you.
Thank you, member for Haver South. Minister responsible for EC&E.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Safety is everybody's responsibility. And so the busing depending on how things are structured, the busing contractor could be responsible for the safe operation of the bus, the technical status of the bus. Education bodies are responsible for developing the policies, but ultimately the department is responsible for ensuring that education bodies are developing policies in accordance with the legislation. So ultimately the GNWT is responsible. Whether or not the Act lays out a framework that makes that easy for us to be responsible and puts the authorities in the right places is a different conversation. But that is the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Oral questions. Final supplementary, member for Haver South.
Ako liksang ito na apasutakan lang neka. Tap ko tabar ilokanyik tiyenyi. Katimaringit na ilitsarap ka lako galwakit ka. Ilitsarap ka kulak galwakit ka kot. Kanakulo tamat ko akaliak paitin na utak tao diri kangit nutakat tam na EC&E mi tabalo tight na ing mikti utak tap ko DEA habaktit DEA na habaktillo katimaringidlo tayo na tabang mikti ko aktit. Tamat ko na kanoka tamat ko atan na kungin migay kanoka agraligat utek tao tingit nutakat ilihakabing yun ay mabingin yun. Tabalo tam na ilihimagigat tam na habaw takilikat huli pang mapagma for me. Kaya nakakakte. Ilihimagibit tabra. Tamat ko na inyong ing miktiguni na habangit chuat ngayokangit na nutakat tamat ko di kayok tinin ikayok himakangit kanok tamat ko di himagibutay na ay mabinyak to di tsura himagibut kuya nakpak. Una tabra tawag ukat wagut tabra pekpak kutik kalawak tunga wagut na kabamani habang niyak to na pilyaw ta kanaya haluit inyo tabra tayo na inyo na inyo guting itin na pilakay ataramik tabra tawag tayo na kayo kanaya haluit ataramik. Ilanip tok tabre ikayu ilakaktuut kalamik ilanip tok hukay chugut ikayu niya kapta inyong nik. Tayo na tabre pilyaw takanemik kaba maurani na tabre lutay na taramik tabre na hapekrakto ako ting tayo na inyo na akimarut. Tamat ko ay na igilokak kugalwakit ka ing na tangalay niya to at nagaluni nalo madahimatlong nikmat ko niya huniglakaki tayo malaki niya to at tama tayo na isumatigiligit kit ka tamat ko at na kayo tikrangin niya kigilokak kugalwakit ka ikayo ko bikramik na mamirutak kakaurutin langit inaurat mamirutin ni kahit na igilokak kugalwakit ka ikayo tikrangin niya kuyanak. Tap ko tamat ko na hibwani pakaruk tayo na tamat ko tabar ikayu tikrangit na ikayu tinikit na ikayu raw ti una tamat ko tabar tayo na igiluilyok to at nagalunin igilokangit shot kanok ikayu labihigi isi ani kuyanak tabraw ka o kakatigig kakatap tam na ing kanok ikayu hurot na habang itchonik tabraw tayo na Ilochan ataw lugo tamat ko na igilungit tayo na igiluilyok to nagaluni igluting akili rutikran niya matigitin na akili rakibut. Yellowknife Northman. Kuyanak. Sisamani ukiw ni tabertap ko na tamat ko nga o kautihe magit ka taramik. Tayo mapakirtakin lang niya kagatap ko nga nunanik atan na koyroak kuyanak. Una minihitak ka nunatigun. Tabraw na una pianik kalawak na go hibun niya put ukiupak. Tabraw tam na natkiw kalawak ka. Tabraw tam na kanal sinaglanin na isumatigim magan nagalunin kanok himawhilyam magan Inuvialuktun. Kuyanak. tabra ilo kata dait na IDC nagalunin tamat ko din na katimaringit ha katimaringit na natkingya alo akik putam na. Ilo kata tay na 9 ton na malakotali akaktut. Tam na tawa malakotali akik na kikakani akik put pang mapak. Kanone ako tilakrang ilitsokani akik tapto mga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope all 9 of those regs are done by the end of this assembly. I think that would be a true step in getting the Department of Lands to start some of their other work. First amongst that is the land lease only policy, Mr. Speaker. I know the department has gone out and done a review on the land lease only policy. I'm wondering if the minister could update this House on when he expects to see changes to that policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Yellowknife North. Minister responsible for lands.
Short, Mr. Speaker, we're hoping to have it at the end of this session, not this assembly, but the end of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Final supplementary, Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think first in that policy, I and
Umani tabra okay kapting ni pang mapak. Uvlupak okay kapting ni. Tabra tam na tuha kap ko tam na tabra ilihimal labiti ko tap na ilichakad labiti ko tam na kanakonek tilakrak. Ti? Kaya nako kakte. Tabra ukpingin chaya ko galawakigaw na. Ukpingin chaya ko galawakigaw na. Tamat ko nga tayo na alla kaya nakate maringit IDC alla kaya kik tabra ni kate makpagaktot kihula ka na wap kun tayo na ang alalay kiya tam na.
Framelick.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. My question is for the Minister.
Tabra na apasuta ka kinyaro tigo na apasuta ka lang nilit kiya. Tabra ka CRTC tap tumi nga to haong na kafe ko ako din. Kaya na ko kakti. Tam na tabra apasuta ka lang na tap tuma. Tabra ukot. Tap ko tabra tuhangit kit ka kanokonek tilakrang kanokonek rangit tap tumuna. Nalaw titigun. CRT's ninik pila kaya taniktin. Tabalub taktay na tap ko tuhahe magibut na tam na tabatay na tayo na tinaglan na ilitso kay piyangit kikitam na aglan, ilitso kanya na aktong huli. Kano na aktilaking itapti muna malakot aliyakon. Framelick. Kaya na ko kakti. Kaya gilit kikitam na apasruta ka kiwlaw taligin mo. Kano tam na tabra tap ko na kinyara lakadit tam na CRTC kanok tita kanak tilakra ilitso kaya paak to nga. Tam na tabra tayo na tabra tam na tabra ilitso kanya kata ilitso kanya pialo tap ko federal government ikayo kitigi utay na tam na trikakana na put ataw chicken. Tabra tap ko dit na ilihimarugut tayo na tunaglan kanit ilitso kayo rugut kanit tunaglan tamat ko ti kayo na ikayutik na waptik ko naglan. Ikayoktakaktugu tauchikuaktugu tamatkot. Tamat kununa. Tap ko tabay na katimaritin na 13 tun pinikangit. Aglan 9 tun aglan kehen aglan tabrani kakaming na 9 tun aglan katimarakalarak tut. Kaya na ko hakti. Tabra CRTC ni. Tabalutay na kakehara tigo ni lichore doanga. Kihudaglan tabra tamat kotin na. Talle mani ukiuni tay na tunaglan na tay na tunaglan na faktu ni kiuni tay na lichore niyak niyak tugut. Kaya nakpak. Ako liksanga tu na apasutanga. Tabar ilokating tayo na CRTC pakpagak parak parung nagalunin isumagak paraw parung tayo na tabar tamatkot na tutkika niya kayakait nagalunin isitsaka niya kayakait kanuheraw tiksangit. Aglan taman tayo na tabragalaguting tayo na ilitsakap ka na yakpatap ko nga kanok angalarutingan ni. Kaya na. Tabralo tayo na tap ko nga agalaktanik ay chutik sa kakto nga tap ko nga. Tamat ko nga ilitsaka huktonik. Tabralo tayo na ilitsakap ka lunga kanuheraw tiksapting nik tap ko nga ay chutik ila niya kaya tam na ilitsakira ka. Nagaluni ilitsakap kaya ka. Can like me. Kaya nakakakti. Tabrao na apekruta ka. Tabralo tayo na tunaglani na nutakawratin na $1 million tun ay chula rakigay na tap to muna ato kramik. Unap tao kami ni hitawra ka. Tuwali akata tabali himagibot. Kari tunagalan tabay $10 million tun na kinyarak hangin miyo nga. Tabay pang mapakit na kutsikit kugalawakigay na kinyarang at aglan pang mapak kano tam na nuneng itchok. Tap ko tabay lichore kaptigo.
Going forward based on need. So I'm wondering if the fund isn't intended to increase, how potentially would the minister be able to accomplish this based on need, and what would be used as determinants of need? Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Cam Lake. Minister responsible for EC&E.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is one avenue that that organizations can pursue to get new childcare infrastructure or assist with that. Indigenous governments also have their own childcare agreements with the federal government.
Tap ko tabay ilokating ay na ingmig tigut tao angalar kaktot. Tayo nalo kinyaran na tunagalan Inuvialuktun na Here kami dung tam na kanito nagala na to kanak tila krakting ilitsaka na putay na. Tabalo tayo na tabala ala ko ang bisramik pakit siningat. Tabra taktay na ilikiramik tap tuminga kano tinaglan kinyawa ni katokonek tilakramingnik ilitsure kakipin Kwenak. Ilangit kutsiktut atoroktuat na pagkiririkranik isumaluktuat inawralani nagaloni ninikpangni. Tamat ko ni nga ibaklaktuat pagkiribikramik. Tamna tabra apekutakin na uniokong nakaga ito atun kiyuneng itsung naktungaglan tamna okautigil lang nakaga $1 million tun kinyawanik ato krakaktugut tapte muna tabrap tao ilangin nik tabra tayo na ato kakamiwit tapte mga huli. Come like me. Kaya nak. Tabraglo na. Apasuta ka una. Apasuta ka. Una apasuta ka tabra ilokhan. Ataw lugoy kayo tikrak tam na pilyabiyong. Nagalonin ilang akihenik. $4 million tun. Tabraglo tayo na tamat ko atin na 114 tayo na inikrakakto tayo na tunaglan. Kanakolo tabar tam na isa mga lugiligit kaya kanakakaw tikrangat. Tabraglo tayo na ingmiktigut tayo tayo na tunaglanin na isumalu takiyap tayo kanakolo tamat ko atin na ilihimabluta.
UT is expecting to plan for some investment or some
Ilakata ilitsakabluta kanot naglanin na tamat ko at akihuhiro at hunalakaki nyo na anak akihuhibaylyo ni tamat ko din na isumatigimit ka aglan tam na litsakapelaw lupiga. Tabatay na ilokata tabra kamamatmat ko at okakati kaptigid tabra tamat ko nga tao kanot nagalan na kinyarating nik ato ko na aktilakrapting nik kanot na ato ko na aktilakrapting nik tabra tamat ko di sumalo kita kibot huli tabra tam na akiho hirok kutsik hilyuni nagaluni abanganik tap tuminga kutsik ilharni aktok abanganik nagaluni ilokanik for February 7 me. Kaya nak. Time na tabra petition. Time like me. Kaya nak kakti. Tabra got Bill 65 malakataliak tam na 65 maling niyarik put. November 3rd pingahungoman pingayoani tabra tap ko tay na tamat ko din na tuha nalang niyarik puto na kano to nagalanin na tamat ko nga kayo ihuro kisak tamarot kayo na kayo Justice Committee nagpirakigay tamartap ko apakita lang nerabot.
2 of the Rules of the Legislative Assembly of the Northwest Territories, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Great
Tap ko tabar Great Slave mean tuglariga tap tama nuner ko tikranga.
Bill 65, Builders Lien Act, be extended by 120 days. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Cam Lake. Motion is in order to the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Reports of committees on review of bills. Reports of committees on review of bills. Member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Mr.
Kaya tabro ko ilakating ko katimaringita. Kaya ko kakti. Yellowknife North. Come like me. Kaya ko kakti. Ilakatik tabro tayo na dinaglan tap ko November 3 mi ulo pa tam na malako talak 65 tap tabar tayo na kanok nuna kun pakiutangat na ganun ilitsura niya tangat tap na ilyakilaw kiyo tap tuminga. January 18, 2023. Tabar tap ko na ilitsura himalakabot. Tabar tamat ko lokating tap ko tamani himunyaktit. Tayo nalo tabar tamat ko na kanok harawatit na galunin ilitsura niya kaluwi tayo na tamat ko sumatirang it.
And contractual arrangements in construction and real property development have changed considerably and continue to evolve. At the core of this legislation lies the intent to ensure that contractors and subcontractors are paid for the work and materials they have provided. The builder's lien legislation would also regulate the way payments are made in the construction industry and
Tamat ko ting mintigun tao kabaligit tayo nagok tabar ing miktiwa kami kano tagalan tamat ko akilin niya ako tikrangit. Tabar Ontario mupta tabar tayo na malako talangit tayo na in mute. Tam na malako talak 65. Tayo na huli tayo na tamat ko din na nuna miktigunit na kokoleraktut.
nearly all active modification of the surface and subsurface of the land, including demolition or removal of structures. Bill 65 updates the law governing construction in the Northwest Territories by clarifying who is entitled to claim a lien, including workers, extending timelines to preserve and perfect a claim, allowing annual and phased holdback amounts, requiring a certificate of substantial performance, providing rights to certain information, and including regulation-making provisions. Committee considerations. Committee reviewed Bill
Tayo na tam na malako talak 65. Tabalo tait na. Ilokating tap ko kabamatit na malakota krangat. Tabalo tawke na huinya gumisung nagalunin isoangun gumisung tamna tutrikallagat. Tabalo tait na kabamaurat na nunangit nagalunin ing miktigun nunangit. Tait na tawak Tabay lokating tait na ing miktigun na kabamalgit. Tabalo tait na ing miktigun tawakit na ing miktigun tawakit na nunakaktuatit allaging miuk tap kunanga kabamat nunangan yun ing miktigun taw kabamalgit ing miktigun nunangat nagalunin ing miktigun taw nunakangit kalwaktilugit ing miktigu ako ming tait na angune ako ming nagalunin kanakulak katamat ko atullagay chuli nunat kaya ako kakti. Time like me. Kaya ako kakti. Kaya
I have 4 pages to read today, Mr. Speaker. Bill 66, an act to amend the Property Assessment and Taxation Act, received second reading on November 3rd, 2022, and was referred to the Standing Committee on Government Operations for review. Bill 66 makes changes to the Property Assessment and Taxation Act. These changes address known issues specific to the assessment side of the Act, based on suggestions from stakeholders to the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs. Specifically, Bill 66 streamlines certain administrative and operational processes to make things more efficient without changing the overall intent of the Act, clarifies and modernizes terminology, and ensures the legislative framework supports a fairer, more effective system. Bill 66 is the first of 2 planned pieces of legislation to amend the Act. Phase 2 will deal with more complex taxation and authorities issues. Public comments from MACA appear to imply that a second bill will not come forward until the 20th Assembly. The committee is disappointed with this apparent delay, as MACA had previously committed to bringing forward a second bill in the life of the 19th Assembly. The Act, which has not been comprehensively reviewed since it was first passed in 1988, urgently requires modernization. The committee hopes MACA will prioritize the second bill and bring it forward as soon as possible. Committee considered public input. Committee sought public feedback on Bill 66 with a public notice and target engagement letters. Committee received written submissions from the Northwest Territories Association for Communities and the Northwest Territories Métis Nation. All written submissions are included in an appendix to this report. Committee also held a public review of Bill 66 on January 23, 2023. At that meeting, committee heard remarks from the Minister of MACA, asked questions to departmental officials, and received oral comments from the NWTAC and NWTMN. Committee thanks the NWTAC and NWTMN for their engagement. Their participation helped committee identify amendments to improve the bill and highlighted other key issues for future consideration. Committee also wishes to highlight a concern raised by the NWT Métis Nation. The NWTMN indicated that they have asked for discussions with the Government of the Northwest Territories to amend the Act to exempt Indigenous Métis rights-based cabins from taxation. However, the NWTMN reports that discussions have not taken place. Committee strongly encourages the Department to engage with all Indigenous governments on Phase 2 changes to the Act. Committee amended 3 clauses, requiring tribunal decisions within 3 months. Clause 18 of Bill 66 proposed an operational change so appeals would be resolved in a timelier manner. Specifically, the clause would have required the Assessment of Appeals Tribunal to sit within 3 months of the Territorial Board of Revision's decision. Committee wanted to see this clause go further. While the clause set a time limit for the tribunal to sit, it did not set a time frame for the tribunal to render a decision. The clause also falls short of the NWTAC's advocacy on the issue. NWTAC Resolution 2198-12 urges that the tribunal be granted a period of no more than 6 months from the time of the deadline of appeals, during it must rule on said appeals. Committee sought an amendment that would reflect the NWTAC's resolution. MACA accepted this request, drafting a motion to drop Clause 18 of the Bill 66 and add a subclause 19.1 to the bill. The new subclause requires the tribunal to make a decision within 3 months of receiving a notice of appeal. Committee was satisfied with the changes and agreed to pass the amending motion at clause-by-clause review. Publishing ministerial orders that vary timelines. Section 112 of the existing act allows the minister to vary any deadline with an order. 2 of the new deadlines introduced in the amended Bill 66 are: 1. The Territorial Board of Revision must give a decision by March 31st on complaints in the previous 12 months. And 2. The Assessment Appeals Tribunal must give a decision within 3 months of receiving a notice of appeal. Committee was concerned that the ministerial orders to vary these deadlines may not be sufficiently transparent to the public. The existing act does not especially require variation orders to be public, though they are registered and published in the next monthly issue of the Northwest Territories Gazette, which is publicly available. Committee sought an amendment to require variation orders to be made public without delay. MACA accepted this request and drafted a corresponding motion. The motion split Section 112 into 2 subsections. Section 112 sub 1 retained the language of the existing Section 112. Subsection 112 sub 2 required any variation order to be published on the department's website within 5 days. Committee was satisfied with the amendment and approved the motion at the clause-by-clause review. Requiring public approval for purchases by municipal council members, officers, and employees. Clause 22 of Bill 66 reverses the current ban on council members, officers, and employees in the 6 municipal taxing authorities to purchase taxable property offered for sale at a municipal public auction. While supporting the intent of Clause 22, the NWTAC explained that more detail in the clause would be beneficial. The NWTAC was concerned that municipalities may have difficulty interpreting the clause as it was drafted. Committee sought an amendment to Clause 22 to specify what it means for the Council to provide prior approval for a purchase. Committee wanted to ensure that the Council's decision to approve would be made public and the Council had more legislative guidance when granting approval. MACA accepted Committee's request and drafted a motion to amend. The amendment added subclause 97.8 brackets 1.1, which requires Council's approval to be made by resolution and to be recorded in the minutes of the meeting to which the approval was given. Committee was satisfied that this addition provided sufficient legislative guidance to municipalities and agreed to pass the motion with the amendment. Committee believes these requirements for public processes will support municipalities in managing the risk of potential conflicts of interest. Further building on the NWTAC's feedback, Committee asked that MACA commit to developing a guidance document covering council approval for purchases by municipal employees. Such a guidance document should include the options and best practices available to municipalities to address the potential for conflict of interest. MACA should consult the NWTAC in this work. Committee scrutinized Board of Revision timeline. Clause 15 of
Bill Malakotele 66, March 31st, the very time na lichakap ka na alit kay kanolo tam kotin na kanut na galan tamat kani nga Malakotele ni ka lichakap ka niya tuat na inbigaw mute kanok dahil na tinagalan. Tabar tam na lichakap ka niya tut kamireo kako tingin na tamat ko nga lichakap ranik. Dahil na lugtaw na piak lugtaw tinik piak lugtaw ninik lichakap ka niya mute dahil na tamat ko o kaluit na galuni lichakap niya kaluit pakit siguming dahil na huy niya garaming nik na galunin. Ito aking raming nik Tamat kotin na ilitsarap kainyaktut. Ukiumi taptumani. Tam na March 31st, nakuangin niya kami ng nagalunin dito. Tutkikakraukpan, tutkikaneanearat. Tam na akulliginyarat. Tam na 22 Bill 66, malakatalak 66. Tam na litsarap kalau kitkataptinga ta kavamattai na angalaritiginya kangat. Kuyanak Yellowknife Northman. Yellowknife Northman. Tabra got hivulaka tam na nutitara malot umahintuglara. Kuyanak kakti.
Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Bill Committee Report 66 has been received and will be moved into Committee of the Whole for further consideration. Reports of standing and special committees. Reports of standing and special committees. Tabling of documents. Tabling of documents. Minister responsible for Health and Social Services.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the following 4 documents. Government of the Northwest Territories Response to Committee Report 37-19(2), Report on the Office of the Auditor General's Audit on Prevention and Recovery Services. Addictions Prevention and Recovery Services Work Plan 2022 to 2024. Follow-up letter for oral question 1319-19(2), Registered Nurses Licensing.
Una tabra hibulaka lang niya ukot nuktita krangat kuyanakpak unaptak tabra una justice nek minitak ikayo hurak na ukaktang matibati ukot tabra kuyanakpak ukakte. Kuyak tabra ukot malong nigniptid lang niyak tunga. Tabra lu. Kuyak pak.
Tabling of documents. Tabling of documents. Minister responsible for Environment and Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kuyak kakte ukot tabra pingahot na malawat elekrat. Tapkot khule niyarit ka. Khule lang niyarit ka. Bracket 2. Tabra tamat ko din na tabra ako ko apasuta ka kopi apasuta ka niyarit. Kaya nakpak. Kaya nako kakte. Tabra ko at malakotaliatit na ilitsarap kala 33 Bill 52. Kaya na. Come like me. Kaya na. Tabra ko at ilya rekokit kaukot. Tabra ko at kanok nutakarat na ito ato ni na ang lachirit ko. Tabra ko at ilya rekokit kaukot. 2021 damat ko din na iwaklak to din na nivakuting nalo uyakawranik iwaklak uro tait na nivakuting 20 February 23, 23, 24. Tabarlo tait na damat ko din na February 22, May 17 managalan. Tabarlo tait na damat ko din na malakatalo krangit. Tabarlo tak tait na ilichakap kalakualawakat ka, ilichakap kayat kualawakat ka. 28, 29. Yukon me na tamat ko din na wakalik. Kuyanakpak.
The first reading of bills. Notices of motion for the first reading of bills. First reading of bills. First reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Second reading of bills. Consideration and committee of the whole of bills and other matters. Bill 23, 29, and 61. Committee report 40-19 brackets 2. Minister's Statement 264-19 brackets 2. Table document 681-19 brackets 2. Table document 694-19 brackets 2. And table document 813-19 brackets 2 with member for Inuvialuktun Lake Senator.
I now call Committee of the Whole to order. What is the wish of committee? Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Committee wishes to consider table document 813-19 brackets 2, 2023-2024 main estimates, industry, tourism and investment, and executive and indigenous affairs. Merci, Madam Chair.
Thank you, committee. Does committee agree? Thank you. Committee will take a short recess. I'll now call Committee of the Whole back to order. Committee, we are going to continue with the
pigortarna kunga got ikayoktikrangit isuliakilisut pingamalongnik. Pihangit kalwarik pen, aglan pigortarna kunga. Ako minita how many? Ko tabra lokatik habaktuk tamat ko di kayo kulunga kanutun kinyawar nik atok tira tingnik nagalunin kinyawar tigun. Apasal takakpat ukot hibon nyortit frame like min kayanak. Ukot tabra ilihim malunga. Tabra tamat ko kanok kinyawar tigun apasal takaktunga. Ukonani agalani page 39 me kulaya kakti tamat kuninga menu hita nga Kenya tigun tabra ukot Inuvialuktun na akingit na aki huhilakay ukot pulak taktot maunga tabra NWT mi matkot pulak taktot kuyanak ukakti tap ko tabra bida pinaminista ko na stern ukot matkot ukot malakotale ni ito pulak takto tigun tabra ukot pulak takto at kole nalingit.
And it doesn't look like there's any changes there. I just want to confirm that. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I certainly could provide a list. There's the Delta Visitor Center, Western Arctic Regional Visitor Center, Village of Fort Simpson, Yellowknife, Norman Wells, and in the South Slave, the 60th parallel. And if I can certainly provide more detail, perhaps by breakdown in writing. That might be easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think there was some one-time CanNor funding or something that was flowed through to the city.
Yellowknife me kuyanak ukakti kuyanak kakapiri kuyanak ukakti tabra ukot kanutun naglan kinyawar ni kaichu tilangit ukakalang nekait tabra wagutin na ukot matkot malawang ni ukyung ni tabra tap ko ay chok magibot kinyawar ni katutikrangan nik kaya na ko kakti frame like min MLA ngat to na kakti ngat ukot tabra huli tap kwa na malakotale ukot kinifala galabot tap ko tabra na kanok tamat ko na malakotale ni itpat pulak takto tigun Tabra got hibun mo ko galawat katap got bulak takot maungan nun apting nun. Tabra lo tayo na ilyakira togo tayo na tunagalan. Tabra bitawak Northwest Territories ni 2025 munagalan. Tabra lo tayo na tunagalan na kinyaranik Inuvialuktun tapgot Inuvialuktun Tabra lokating tapgot Inuviafanik pihuktot na ta $364,000 tun tabra Inuviafanik pekaktot pang mapak. Tap ko lutabra kuya ko kakti frame like min tabra alani kuli o kakrechunga kuya nakpak great min tabra na apasho takaw na tabra Inuvialuktun na Inuvialuktun na igilo ay na tukuvingit mani Inuviakirut ili matkodin na yellow knife mi matko tukkulekhe hurot okakatigiravatigit nagaluni matkod pulak taktitin na ni kai kaming na pulak na tukkuvi tukkuvi kraming ni kivaklekauting na tukkuvi liokaktot mani yellow knife mi matkod ing miktigun havalgit isumagiravatigit tabra kotin na tap ko tabra iglu lioktotin na mani tukkukray lioktotin na tait na tamat kop tak tabra ukakatigin niya kayabut kayanak Grace Living kayanak ko kakte tabra kot tamat kot ukay falang niyat ka tabra tamat koding miktigun havalgit tabra lo tayo na itna tukkuvi chaktit itna lo nulak takvi chaktit kay kaming maunga kanoko ting tamat kodin na tamani na kitkani Inuvialuktun ilan ni hapasalakaktot tamat kodin na kanok malong ni ukyung ni tamat kod tuhakat ka nagalunin ilitsarikat ka kanok haranak tilakrang itamani tap ko ko tamat tumapuwak lako ni tikin matigot tabra tait na kanoharanak tilakrang kanoharautik rangin nik isumaluktunga pang mapak puwak lako ni taman na isumalugibluwa kuyanak huneakpat kavamatuwagut tabra tawak kapini kanikun Vancouver mi katimarogu tait na tamat kot isumagibligit nagaluni kakibligit okabligit ilitsakanya ako ta kanoherautik rapting tawak ilitsakanya ako ta kanoheramagata tabraptaw tamat ko at nutanik ay chulgin matigot atutik raptingnik tamat ko na pulaktak to nun tumalaktak to anik mga nunapting nun. Kanolo tamat ko at tabra kanok kanoharatik raptingnik tamat ko tabra isumat kapti tabra tamat ko at kehenik mani nunapting ni kanok kanoharatik rangit inyo na ako tigun kehenik isumalu tabra NWTMI kuat kati makpaktot hanahuidut umatukliani hivoni tabra ilokainik tamat kuat pulak taktot nagalunin kanok tamaw nga pulak maw nga aktot takpawang alanin inunanin tabra tawak inyuwing mi tap kuningan nawarirot na isuatun tam na tabra tawak tamat kuningan nawarirot matkotin na kinyawanik ay 27FEB2023 atok ranginyik kayanak pinitak kayanak tabra tawak tayo na katimakatikim katam na ataning at tamat ko at tabra tayo na apikot tayo mikangatam na hok mao nga pulak tangit patayin kanok tamat ko at pabulak taktot mao nga ukakay mikangit Deputy Minister Stan tabra tap ko at ilihimhagi po tayo na tabra tamat ko at na na kihuhiro at tamat ko at nakit kanuhilya ka naugalwak tilugit mao nga uwapting nun naurigalwak tilugit tabra tamat ko at awan muntay na hunala akihuhiman tabra tamat ko tabra akihumit tabra tawak mat ko utok kanat matko na isumaktot.
I'm happy to hear that. I guess I just want to come back to something we talked about before the pandemic took over our lives, and that was the lack of anything around in the downtown core. In the winter months when we do have the Aurora tourists, you often would see them sort of wandering around downtown, kind of looking for things to do. I do recognize that the Yellowknife Visitors
Yan niptak tabra ibakla kurut hurak rilyo kurut mga pula kaming na tabra tamat ko din na tamat ko at habak titak rakalo abot tamat ko nga hurakaw gawaran na nagalunin na tawag tak ti chirik samik ibakla kalawak ta tayo na sumutige huwag tamat ko. Kaya tap ko ba tamat ko isumagirag sa kayo galawa kabut. tamat ko tabra tait na kanuhinyiking miktiuni na hanawraktot naganuni kilaya raktot tamat kuninga tabra kanyak tuak te lahilyugit tait na tamat ko na habak tukrakalot habak titak rakalot tait na kating habak kakamaut tamani tait na pulak tawrak patamaw nga taman ako liksak tam na una mga bulat taktot NWT mun tabar tamat ko na pubaklanik pigalo piman tabar tayo maktitakangit 100,000 tun ukiut king min na tayo na tunagalan aki kuchikirok kinyarak atokrak Kainak.
Can answer that shortly. If it's longer, maybe you could provide it in writing to the committee or to the member. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would certainly be happy to provide a list to committee of all the tourism funding available. There are quite a number of pots. I do have a detailed note here that lists them all with the amounts, and that probably is the most effective way of putting that forward. And I would just otherwise give one quick note, which is to say CanNor does often come in, and we are able to work with them when there's particular funding shortages for communities, or to connect communities directly to CanNor so they can go to them. So wouldn't want to not give them that thank you where it's available. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we'll get that to AS. Okay, thank you. All right, member for Yellowknife North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I saw that there's some engagement and a land use permit going in to expand the parking when you get to the end of Tibbet Lake at the end of the Ingham Trail. Happy to see that. Happy to see that the signage has been added. I'm just hoping the minister can clarify whether that's ITI or infrastructure money or operations or capital money, where exactly that money is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the signage is a shared initiative with ENR, ITI, and infrastructure. I believe that we are responsible for the parking. No, I'm wrong. I think that's, let me see what the Deputy Minister has to say. I was going to say.
Deputy Minister Strand.
Madam Chair, that is infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Yellowknife North.
Well, I'll save questions on that for infrastructure. I guess I'm going to try one more attempt, my last in this assembly, probably at winter camping. I know there's many different ways this could look. I want to perhaps point out one of the cheapest ways.
Kanawala katam na angalallarok tay nalu ataw hibtangit chok. Umikimalin niya kagawa kagawa. Tabralu tay na utok kana tay na hawak tut tamatay nalu tamat kuninga hawakaw ko din. ECNE tay na tabray Tabralu tamat kot ITI tamat kot na kinaranig mo na krihurat tamat kot tay na tabra ukiumi tay na nulak to kabisirangit isumalugi lugit tay na hinig pakakpa tabra tok Tabra North Slave ni tay na himig pekaktut. Tabra tak tay na ukiumi tay na nulak bisrangit na ang mait kawalawakit katamat kuninga. $200,000 tuntay na tunagalan. Tabar tay na malakong ni ukyong ni tay na uktoka kamarugi tay na tunagalan. Tamat ko tabra inyuga kiru tay na tunagalan. Tayo na ito nagalaan ukto tikrabot. Tamat kaptak tayo na iglura kaugto tinaptak nulaktak bikranik. Kano ito nagalaan tayo na ilihimabat tam na ilihima ba yung kanod nagalaan tamat ko din na ito ko na akto tamat ko nga tayo na lo ukiumi na nulaktak bikranik. Tayo lo tayo na tayo ilihima rin pilyan na kanig kihenig pikakanak tamat ko nga ang mailay chuhe. Kainak. Tabertam na ukakahimagkakaak ko.
Or now ECC and ITI, and I can certainly suggest that we put this on our shared agenda.
Thank you. Are there any further questions under tourism and parks? Member for Tabacha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question is the extension of hours within the parks. At Queen Elizabeth Park, they close on September the 1st, and not this past year, but the year before, we didn't have snow till November the 3rd, and we had warm weather until almost the end of October. So I'm not asking that it open till the end of October, but at least till the end of September. It's really important that we encourage more tourism. We encourage people to use our parks as much as possible, and I'm just wondering how the Minister feels on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister of Finance, or Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, so I mean, as I've said, I think to the last round of questions, I certainly in general would be happy to see more usage of the parks and more tourism opportunities. The challenge is ensuring that the contractors who run the parks are available firstly, and it may not, that they are prepared to undertake whatever the asks are, and there then has to be sufficient occupancy and incoming revenue to make some business case for it. It probably will not fully offset the costs to the department to keep the parks open, but if it could at least come close.
Yang tamat ko at nalapkinak tukui tukiumi. Ukot apara kanagit mani tukuwingnik muna krehurot ki tamat ko at apara kanagit nilitso kanyang itsuit kanaharaw tinginik. Tam na tabertay na tap ko na ni itok sa batchamin. Tap ko at ukay kapke Fort Smith una kinaranik kay chirabihiyong minhitak ICI may kinaranik munakrim. Tap ko tabra Parks Canada min. Kainak. The Batchamin. Fort Smith. The tap got kinarnik pilachok. The tap unat kaong naktok tamat ko ng alanin inarani. Inuvialuktun tamat ko tabra pulaktit tabra nga Fort Smith moon pulaktit. Nulaktok bingitok tam na nalikwak pa tam na nalikwak pa kanok ang alaruting at Salt River First Nation, nagaluni nukot alat tangungichot katimaringi ha nagaluni tauchukani hat. Tapko tabar Portsmouth minya khanuhara tingin nikilichore paanartunga. Tabar lichore paalakalunga tapko tabar kharilagitka. Tamnapta tabar nullaaqtorvik ikuallak himarok. Kana beamik taniktin pinik pilarigat. Tabar tamat kotin na nullarang. Tabar tauchikuni na nutakakaitit na ilyaki himarot taptuminga. Tabar na okallaw tilaw kiga ilichorilla kogiga taptuminga. Inuvialuktun ukiuni tabar tamat kot ingilakan tap kot aturukangat.
And surrounding communities, and I'd like them to examine that if possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the Deputy Minister was actually quite recently in Fort Smith, and perhaps I'll just, rather than me speak for her, have her speak to just whatever conversations briefly she might have had. I don't know that there's a specific ask from the town to us just yet, but I'll turn it to her for just some particular detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Minister Strand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I was able to meet with the town of Fort Smith on a number of items. Conibear Park is also, we know, a high priority for the town, and we are there to help as a lead on developing that project. So we also hope that they can move forward on it. Another interest of the town was Mission Park as well, and what that can offer to the community. So that's one that we will also be re-engaging on with all of the interested parties. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Tabacha.
The last question I have is the utilization of the new conference center in Fort Smith. Both the new Salt River First Nation Conference Center and the Fort Smith Métis Nation Building Conference Center. One is a bit older, one is a newer one, but I'd like to ensure
Tapko ko kailang niyarika tapko tukumavik. Tabarlu taktay na. Tapko atokogat tamna igilungat tap tangongit shot. Tabarlu taktay na. Tabarlu taktay na kawangadukot. Tabarlu na kallagurit ato niyak niblugo nagalo ni tay na sumatigirakigaw na matkot tangungitshot matkot na ilanik katimayak to kamingit na akihubay chokaktot tamat ko nga ato koblu ato huting pigalawa kami tamat ko dahin tangungitshot igilungit na atong ilugit. Tabarlo tayo na tamat ko katimaringit na katimarawanikit na munakrihurot nagalunin ilihamarot. The Batchaman. tabra akulla kuna koyana koy pin koy tamna kailigin man maunga maunga inipting nun Fort Smith mun kailigin man koy parli kiga tamna kaiman amin pulaman o kakatiyak to hluiti nuit koyanak pak mam poimin koyanak tap ko tabra kanut nagalan Kenya ranika Clito region mun aicho kagawe he nagalonin kagachuri 21-22 tabra okautigidlagiga tabra government in other territories ni
And then we'll try and see if we can provide that in more greater detail at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Member from Mapwe.
Thank you. Madam Chair. Yeah, that's why it's really important to have Clicho region, so that way we know how much money is being spent and what are we doing with program and services. So.
Ili tsaka palo lunga tabra tamat got to hop kala kam nga kuyayak parakay pin kuyayak parakay katamat got na isumati kangatigut tabra nyuyak to tay na pirakigay arago akihuni akatin pulak tinik munakrirot matkot kay matay na kanito nagilan kinyaranika ukalang matatabrago karaki huni akati akakagay tabralutay na kanito nagilan tamat kotin na atutik rangin kinyaranik kaya na tabraptawak tayo na kanito nagilanin na Clicho me atutik rangat tamat kot kinyarat tabralutay naptawak ilihaw rin ikon tamat kuninga kanok pulaktit at pulaktinik kanok tabra tamat kotin na pulak taktot maunga nunapting nun kanok angalan niyak patigit tamat kuninga ilihaw ririksyanik ilihaw rakaktut kuyanak tabra wagutin na tabra ukot Yellowknife me tap kwa uwapting nin na kaliurut ta Yellowknife me nin kakakating tabra uwapting nugat akaktut uwagutahin ikihilibliugo kanok atutikrak ngat kanolo Yellowknife me tabra wagutak Clicho me uwagutak na piraktut aragok yakatigat Yellowknife muktangnek uwagutakilan huichugut kanok tabra tutay na betchikumuktot inyugekirot tabra luptok allanik tabra tap ko pirak tikchak pangnak nekmata nagalunin kanuhinik allanik kinyaktok tichimmata tabra tabrungaktot betchikumonahi tabra tap ko na inyugektot inuit tabrunga bulak tot maunga yalo naip mun tabunga tautugiak tot inyugiak kirut. Tamat koptak watimin luni tamat kotin na ikayok patigit tamat kuninga bulak takto atigun tay na tabra tamat kotin na tutkit na uwagutin na ikayo uwaguti kayo kaya atigut tay na bulak tinik inyo kinayak tigut tay na kuta klituri jimi na kahok tay napta kuwud inyo kin ngit pita. Tabra tay na tam na tabra okal kulian na kuha kanya kiga. Tap ko tabra tay na bulak takto tay na nakuha kanya ka kuliatin. Tam na tabra ikayo ihuktunga tamat kuninga. Tabra tay na tamat kotin na mumiktichirot lo nagalo ni tamat kotin na habawra ni kun tamat kuninga.
Community wants to have a community tourism coordinator, and that might help to advance to put forward in a more advanced way what is available and on offer in the Cleat Show community. Because I think we'd all agree we'd like to see more, but it will have to be Cleat Show government led with us in support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Montfouet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a timeline for the North Arm Parks? When is it going to be completed?
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe it is open, at least largely open to be this summer, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Montfouet?
Thank you.
Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to talk about, I guess, the arts. And one thing I still see that there's a need for is to secure naturally tanned hides for crafts and garments and those type of things. I'm just wondering what the government is or the department's doing to ensure that happens, so that we don't have, don't have the artists having to go south to look for tanned hides that aren't from the Northwest Territories or are commercially tanned. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, this is another area that I think what I may have to do is put this one on my list for our shared multi-department sit-down between the LNR departments. ENR does play, I believe, a lead role or a significant role in terms of accessing hides. There have been some pilot programs, I believe, over the last year or so in terms of finding different ways to provide access to hides, and I have heard the differing views from members of the community as to whether or not those were appropriate and culturally relevant. So, as I say, I will put that on my list for a meeting, and once we've had that meeting, we'll confirm with the member what opportunities there may be going forward between the two departments. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Hay River South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next question here. I guess last week we had the agri-conference here in Yellowknife. So I'm just wondering, we talk about agri-tourism and that. How much interest is there by the Indigenous governments or persons or businesses, I guess, in providing that type of service? Because, when I look at it, when I look at tourism and it doesn't seem that's something that Indigenous people may want to do. So I'm just, and I may be wrong, so I just want to be corrected if I am, to see if, how much interest there is. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I can't say on the perspective of what Indigenous government's view on it might be, What I can speak to a bit more is with respect to the foraging and harvesting opportunities. For example, Ecology North, I believe, has been running tours out to do harvesting walks or foraging walks here just in Yellowknife. So to the extent that these are the people who understand and know the lands the best, I would think those opportunities are there. Whether they want to commodify that and turn that into a tourism product, again, there is funding opportunity for mentorship, for mentor training, and then to market their products through Inuit tourism. And it's just a matter of connecting those opportunities should people be interested in doing so. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Hay River South.
Hay River South me. Kuyanak. Tabrap tawk matkota kanyak to kapkit na ilichokanya kapkit cha ilichokalitika. Tabralutay na kanak tamatkoding miktigun naurot asiet hunalakaki naurok mani nunapting ni. Tamatkolo tay na tamna tabra khalaw tigilakiga kanoklo tay na mani nunapting ni miktigun naurot. Tay na tabra tamatkot pulak taktot mau nga nunapting nun. Tay na inuvialuktun nakanyak toak tilarut. Narvanik, nagalunik, kungnik, tamat kuning aloing miktigun nauronik. Tay na tabra kanu hinigilakata tuktoak tichilarut tamat kuning pulak taktonan. Tabralo tay na kanok tamatkot angalarutikbut. Tabralo tay na tok tamatkot na ataw chimik tay na ingmun munakari nyak pirukrakalwa pirukrauruhi tamat kuningay na iba ay nakanyak to ako pigo manahi piyakon tamani humilakay tok kaya nakpak. Tabralutay na tamat ko na ilichakap kainit tamat ko nung na pulaktak to at tukumawingit ilichakap kay raktut tamat ko nga. Tabralo tamat ko na ilichakap kay niya larut tamat ko nga. Hay River South. Kuyanak. Tabrap tay na. Tam na avigvik. Avigakagay tamat ko at Yukon me, Northwest Territories lo tay na tamat kami nga aving nikun tap ko tay na tap ko na isumalong na kami diyan ni agalan tamat ko nga ato ko ni aktonip tao na tamat abing nit pigo manaychut na nunang itay na abig tako gait tabralo tamat ko na tam na tabra kinyaranik inuvialuktun atokaktugut. Tabra tay na hiniktaw tabra tam na pit panin na ilan ni huamatit akihuhi rut pang mapak tabra tamat kuninga atut atokranik na ilyakanyak isumalo gihugit ka tamat ko dahil abing nit abig tuarnit tamat nunanik tabra tawduk isumagikap ko isumalarak tunga kanok in magay tamat ko at abing nikun Kuyanak. Tamat ko tabra kanyak to kami na ilito kanya kami. Kao na kri rote na tamat kuninga. Tamat ko aptak tabra tait na ili magibut. Kano to nagalaan tabra tait na. Tamat ko atit na tukubit. Parks nek pirakagait na nulak tokbit. Tait na tabra tait na isumalugir mirakibut. Kuyanak. $23, $24. Tam na hugin yak parung $5,000 na to connected. Tam na apakruta kakpi hitapti muna. Trinidad wala day.
Madam Chairman, you know, I'm just thinking about the business incentive policies. In the early days, when I was the local housing authority manager in the community of Dilo,
Ingilakan, iglulikiroani, atan ko kapkitab ko iglulikirot nunamni. Tabrap tait na ataramik tait na malakotali tamat ko pigo malait kibut. Kanakolo tamat ko din na mani nunapting ni angalat sirot. Tabra pang mapakahin. Tamat ko fourth resolution mi. Tait na tabra tamat ko ni nga na trail anik pirakagay tait na akraligat mat ko ting miktigun tait na igiluranik kaktot akraliganik nuktaldakang ninik nagalunin aulatig hugay tamat ko kanok inyuni akbiktun igiluratun in mata trailanik pirakagay tanik tun tamat ko tait na hitsa tait na inyugektot tabrani na kinyaranik na kinyaranik akili rakagay tamat ko tahin tait na hinik tau kakoting takpabanga tabra tait na tabrelu tait na kanok tamat ko din na kanok at tam na kanok tamat ko angalachu magapke ilitsara huktunga kayanakpak minitak kay siyami kinaranig mo nakre. Tabra kanok ingilakan tait na tabra tait na tunaglan kanok tamat ko tin na huinyag liro tamat ko ni nga trailanik tau kakoktanik takpawang atulla hiblyugitahin tamani inaurami nanulak tokbigiblyugiti tamat ko tabra kanok isumatigi kapki tabra lu tait na Tabalu tay na kanok angalatsi rito bagut tamat ko atin na isamati hu tay na. Kuyanak. Tabalu hiwon isumakama. Kanokolo tabal tay na. Kanok tamat ko atin na. Tabalu tay na ilulakiru atin na. Ilulakiritin na kanok tamat ko nga ilokak pata. Kanok hekaw tigin yak patigitap ko atin ilulakirit. Kanok luangalan niyak patigit. Tabra ukot. Tabra tamat ko atin na kanok titaw tikrangin yik naluru tu bagut pang mapak. Kanok lu tamat ko atin na munakri krangin yik isumagirut. Kuyanak. Tap ko tabra kanok haraw tip tingnik ka iliyak hinyak tugut tamat ko nga munakri kranik.
To work with the Intergovernmental Council at the Secretariat level in particular to we've been figuring out and understanding how it will look as it's evolved. You know, I think that's, if I was to point to one thing that speaks to how the Northwest Territories is going to have to evolve the way we govern and do our governance, both as a public government and then vis-a-vis Indigenous governments and modern treaty holders, that is a process that, again, having now seen it unfold, provides some very, I think, exciting lessons for how things can be done differently. The other one I'd point back to is the procurement review, where, again, we've been trying to do that not only as a government-led and government-run, but as one that is inclusive. It takes a little longer to have a more inclusive conversation, but the product at the end is hopefully better. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? Member for Trinidad Walladay?
I know that she touched on the Minerals Act. Right now, it's also under review, that's my understanding, but it's also a concern that was also brought to my attention by a member from my community that, you know, there should still be more Aboriginal and Indigenous engagement on this act, but right now it's what's happening is that they're working behind the scenes, it seems like, with industry, etc. Is it your hope to start working with Indigenous governments and then develop?
Ataw chikun tap ko tangung ichot habakatigil labagi. Nagaduni ni sumyaw katigil labagi. Tap ko ilihimalaw ilichakalaw kit katay na. Minitak kinyaranik munakrihurak. Tabrap tawak tay na ataram tap ko
Notwithstanding, I know perhaps not the view of every member in this House, the industry partners out there are often quite critical of the fact that they feel that they haven't had the opportunity to have as much input as they want. So it seems like you can't always make everybody happy. But in this case,
lugit inyo na rukalak tugut aglan tap ko taw kalaging mute inuit pihukto at naptaw Inuvialuktun ito ni nangalatsit kablugit inuit pigalwak tilugit tabrap taw na kanok kanok titaw tikranik na kanok tamat kop taktawelo katatay na habaw takay ituatun habaw takay niya kalawakibot Inuit na itumangit nalaw niyak luit agla nila niptaw tay nakaruinyak tay nakaruinyak taw kangalatsi niyak to ni ituangin miyok kaya nak
Member for Trinity Willowday.
And just go forward in your on page 242 and 243. Again, regional allocation of funding and positions, etc. I mentioned a few weeks ago as well that we got I guess I do have a concern in regards to how North Slave is how we're rolled up into the North Slave region. Whether it be DLO, data, and then the question is, where does Tutsuke fit in? Are they part of the North Slave or South Slave? And in terms of the South Slave region, again, it's right now, from what I was told last time I was going through this, is that South Slave is predominantly Fort Smith and Hay River, but so Fort Resolution, yes, it falls in the South Slave, but then when in terms of positions and allocation, it's really skewed here because when you take a look at it, 15 full-time positions for whether it be the headquarters and then other positions they have, it's nothing on here, part-time, seasonal. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you know, we may have, the government's going to have to really take a look at how we're going to go forward on this document and because DLO data is rolled into the North Slave and Fort Resolution Tutsuke is also, I presume, it's part of the South Slave. So, but yet in my Trinity Willowday writing, we got four communities. So I don't know when government's going to start changing their booklet here to reflect that. So I just want to know what are your plans to fix this problem? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of ITI.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, this is just the Business Development Investment Corporation, and it's just, so the 15 staff mentioned here are really just for the BDIC, and they do, a lot of their work while based in headquarters, they support staff, ITI staff, who will deliver their frontline work out in communities through the EDO offices that are based in communities around the Northwest Territories. And at this point, there's no intention necessarily to, change the fundamental functioning of the BDIC. There is a lot of work underway right now to change their act, for one, which I believe is before the House. There's a new corporate plan out for them, and there's a real drive to try to look at
Allaging kalugit mani Northwest Territories me. Tabralutay na himmaw niya akuptigo. Ubagut tabratay na waptik kuntay na pilyay kikput. Kuya ko kakti.
Thank you. The motion is in order. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? All those abstaining? Motion is carried. Consideration of Department of Industry, Tourism, Investment 2023-2024 main estimates, operating expenditures, total department is deferred. Thank you, Minister. Thank you to the witnesses for appearing before us. Sergeant at Arms, please escort the witnesses from the chamber. We'll take a short recess. Call Committee of the Whole back to order. Committee have agreed to consider table document 813-19 brackets 2 2023-2024 main estimates. We will now consider the Department of Executive and Indigenous Affairs. Does the Premier have any opening remarks?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I'm here to present the 2023-2024 main estimates for the Department of Executive and Indigenous Affairs. Overall, the 2023-24 main estimates continue to support the priorities of the 19th Legislative Assembly and vision of Budget 2023 by funding the GNWT's negotiation and implementation efforts with respect to the conclusion of self-government resource and land claim agreements with Indigenous governments, and providing support for the departmental activities related to the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. The Department's main estimates propose a 1% decrease from the 22-23 main estimates. This is based on a $120,000 reduction to the overall cost.
Habat Tainitunalan, Kenya, and Kanitunalan, Atonek Tilakak, but Taber got Idlakidat Tainitunalan. Taberlo tayo na tunagalan na kapamawaro tiba ni tayo na tunagalan kanut nagalan tabra atong anak tila krang idil chakalit kay.
Madam Premier, please introduce your witnesses.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On my right is Martin Goldney, the Deputy Minister of Executive and Indigenous Affairs, and on my left is Ms. Lauren Alexandra, the Director of Shared Corporate Services. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Welcome.
Tapko kigayok tini akit ka. Taber tamit ko na tapko taber apasaw takak pihitap tuminga tapko nga. Taber tamat ko na kanut nalan 124 lo 125 lo. Apasaw takak pat Frame Lake min. Kuya nak. Ilicha follow tunga tap tuminga tap ko nga kuya nak. Tap ko tapra kaba mauro diwani nani kanok. Tap ko tapra inuvaluate abakatigin niya kahit ilicha niya kahit pinga hurut. Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Inuvialuktun tap ko tabra habakatiging yak to tap timuna. Friend like me.
They don't need to wait. We're working on them all simultaneously. There is a little bit of a trust issue that we're trying to address right now, Madam Chair, with the federal government. And so hopefully when the federal government shares the scientific review, that will regain some of that trust. So it's always a delicate area that we work on when we're trying to work with different parties, different government levels. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Friendly? Okay, thanks. Well, then I'd like to ask about the scientific review. Public document that's now finished, or
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have asked for that to be made public as well. My understanding from the federal government is they're going to work with and we'll still pressure them to make that report public because I do believe it should be a public document. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake?
Thanks. So I'm just trying to understand this. So scientific review was probably contracted by the federal government and you know, it's finished. So why does that have to go through some sort of process with IRC before it's actually made public? Like the work's finished, I presume, but can you shed any light on that for me? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Madam Premier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just put your hand on top. Thank you, Madam Chair. The work on the scientific review was to be done in cooperation with the Inuvialuktun, the GNWT, the Yukon government. So that is why that work should be shared with the membership first. There's been no discussion with the four parties on that science-based review at this point. So we're asking for a review of that so that we can all sit at the table and discuss it first. And really, I mean, even if they reached out to the Inuvialuktun, it is their land. It's their area. So I think that to do due diligence, I think that the federal government should share their findings and have that conversation with the people that are affected by it. After that work is done, then our next push is to make that public. But again, recognizing that that's a federal government document, we took part in it, and so all we're asking for is to let's have the conversations first. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake?
Yeah, it just seems rather mysterious to me, but okay. I want to move on to the external advisory table. That I think this is another place where I can raise that, or is there a different activity I'm supposed to raise it in?
Sorry, though. Which?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So there's an external advisory table for NGOs that EIA had committed to establish, seems like a long time ago. There was a public call for people to submit names. Where are we at with this, and is this the right activity to ask questions about that? Thanks, Madam Chair.
If it's not, I'm sure you'll have the answer, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It took me a while to figure out which committee as well. So yes, the NGO Advisory Committee, we did ask, put an ad out, ask for people that were interested to sit on that committee. We got quite a few interested, actually, and so we've just picked the committee members. We tried to be as diverse as possible within that, and representing all the regions as well, not just from Yellowknife. And so we're just, I believe, last week, they've appointed, they're letting people know now, and they have 1 month to be able to do that work and then bring back recommendations to us on what we should be doing differently with the NGO sector. As soon as we find out more, so we will actually be willing to meet with committee as well, an update committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can the minister share the membership of this external or the NGO advisory group with members, even on a confidential basis if necessary, or announce it even better? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Premier.
Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. We'll have to check. I mean, that work has just been going on, so we'll check to see if they've all been notified first, which I know that they've been working on the last week, so hopefully they've all been notified, although sometimes people are hard to get. So I'm not too sure if it will be made public. I don't see a reason why, but the least I will commit to is that if there's any reason that I can't, then I will share the names of all members with MLAs in confidence, if there's any reason that I can't, but I don't see at this point why I can't. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I'm all for doing it publicly. Like, I would think that this is something you'd want to give yourself some credit for. So in any event, I think I heard the Premier say, though, that this group is only going to be around for a month. It seems like a pretty short time frame to look at some of these issues, and I would have thought that you might want to have some kind of group like this maybe on an ongoing basis. Maybe they meet, once or twice a year. You can bounce ideas off them. They might have some advice, suggestions for how we improve our relationship and funding of NGOs. But did I hear that right? Just 1 month to do some work? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this group that we're bringing together now is a working group. Madam Chair, all of them should have experience within the fields, hopefully years of experience within the different fields. So we're really looking from them from an experience viewpoint of what do they need, what do we need to work on now. I agree with the member that perhaps this should be something that's long-term. I don't think that at this point I'm ready to commit to that. This is going to be a group that will receive an honorarium for their work done. I think that in general, Madam Chair, that the NGO sector has not been consulted appropriately within governments. This government, past governments, this government had COVID, in fairness, but past governments as well. So I think that the member is right. We should be looking at some kind of a forum that we can actually have more engagement with the NGO sector. They're valuable. They provide incredible amount of work, and we do need to recognize them. But this work is to meet our commitment, our priority, and it's really structured, work-focused, and paid work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess I'd like to get a commitment from the Premier then that the report, recommendations, whatever, from this group are going to be made public, and that there's going to be a response from this, from the Cabinet to those recommendations that can also be made public. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, absolutely, the report will be public unless there's things that are confidential under the Privacy Act that I have to redact, I think is the right term for that, of course, but other than that, like if there's names, etc., those kind of things, but other than that, the report should be public, and the recommendations, I mean, what's the use of doing it if we don't have some kind of reply to the recommendations? So yes, I will commit to that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks. That's all I have on this one. Thank you.
Are there any further questions under Cabinet support? Seeing none, please turn to page 124. In Executive and Indigenous Affairs Cabinet Support Operation Expenditure Summary 2023-2024 main estimates $2,290,000. Does committee agree? Thank you. We'll now move to corporate communications, beginning on page 127 with information item on page 128. Questions under corporate communications? Seeing none, please turn to page 127. Executive and Indigenous Affairs Corporate Communication Operation Expenditure Summary 2023-2024 main estimates $1,512,000. Does committee agree? Thank you. Directorate beginning on page 130 with information items on page 130 1 to 133. Are there any questions under the Directorate? Seeing none. Oh, member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think this is the part of the budget where the government service officers are found. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Are we adding any to the network in this budget? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, not at this time. We're not adding any. I haven't received any requests over to do that as well. I do know that, Madam Chair, that they would like a one-stop kind of in Yellowknife, but these really are for people in the communities so that they can access. A lot of it is actually translation services, elders, etc., to access programs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, the Premier jumped ahead a few of my questions there, but let's start with which communities don't have GSOs right now so that they can know that the Premier is ready to fund them when they submit a request. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't rattle off which ones I don't, but I can rattle off which ones I do based on the sheet. So we have them in Lutsuke, Betchico, Gamity, Wati, Wequity, Fort Resolution, Hay River Reserve, Fort Liard, Fort Providence, Nahanni Butte, Jean Marie River, Sambuque, Covell Lake, Delaney, Fort Good Hope, Toledo, Aklavik, Fort McPherson, Paulituck, Sax Harbor, and Sigachik. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's it.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks. Well, I want to thank the Premier for rhyming those off also quickly, but this is a free advertisement, so if your community was not named, you want a GSO, Premier's happy to entertain a proposal. So there. So I do want to talk about the GSO function or that sort of service in the context of the regional centers and even in Yellowknife. We actually do have that in Yellowknife for the Francophone community, and as I understand it, it's actually quite well used and provides good service. So, we've talked in the past about is there an opportunity to partner with the federal government, as we do in some of the smaller communities as well, with Service Canada, then these people doing some Service Canada work as well. There's a Service Canada office in Yellowknife, and is there any further thoughts about trying to work with the federal government so that there can be a combined storefront, single service window, so to speak, for the federal territorial government in a place like Yellowknife? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that really the whole purpose of the GSOs, government service officers, was to be able to provide services in small communities. It wasn't seen as a regional or headquarters initiative. I know that there may be some appetite for it. I'm not against it either. But at this stage, in honesty, Madam Chair, we're at the end of the government. We got huge things we're trying to get finished within EIA. We got not only the priorities, the mandates, etc. We got things going on geopolitically that we're also watching for. We just went through COVID, etc. So I would say within the term of this government, it is not something that I'm looking at taking on at this point. Might be something that the member wants to bring forward in the next assembly. Again, those things take time to do, and my focus right now is getting done what we've already got on our plate. Now, if the opportunity slipped by me and there was a conversation, I would take the opportunity, but at this point, it's not something I'm going to focus a lot of time on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, the Premier knows I'm pretty persistent because I've been raising this now, I think, for about 7 years, so maybe it needs to go in a transition report or something, and for the next assembly to deal with. I think that's all I've got on this one. Thanks, Madam Chair.
All right, so are there any further questions under the Directorate? Seeing none, please turn to page 130. Executive and Indigenous Affairs Directorate, Operation Expenditure Summary, 2023-2024, main estimate, $6,501,000. Does committee agree? Thank you. Executive Council Offices, beginning on page 135 with information items on page 136. Questions? If there are no questions, please turn to page 135. Executive and Indigenous Affairs, Executive Council Offices, Operation Expenditure Summary, 2023-2024, main estimates, $4,176,000. Does committee, member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. You're just speeding through all this stuff. So I commend you for that, but I think this is the section of the EIA budget, if I've got it correctly, where negotiations funding is found, and I'm just wondering what is happening with negotiations. You know, in the last assembly, the Premier, when he was a candidate for Premier, he promised to have all of the negotiations completed at the end of 4 years.
You're in the wrong one.
Oh, I'm in the wrong section. There's one more. I'll wait, Madam Chair.
All right, so please turn to page 135, Executive and Indigenous Affairs, Executive Council Offices, Operation Expenditure Summary 2023-2024, main estimates, $4,176,000. Does committee agree? Thank you. Committee, Indigenous and Intergovernmental Affairs, beginning on page 138 with information on items pages 139 and 140. Member for Frame Lake.
Wow, thanks, Madam Chair. I think I'm on the right one now. So I mentioned in the last assembly there was a promise to get all the negotiations done by the end of the 4-year life of the assembly, and the only thing that happened was an agreement in principle on self-government for Norman Wells, Métis. And so where are we at with negotiations? Look, I fully recognize that COVID was not helpful in terms of meeting and working together and so on. And I'm not asking the Premier to divulge, I hope, anything that's confidential, but I think there was a mandate commitment to get 2 agreements. Are we anywhere near that? You know, we got less, 6 months, 8 months left? Are we going to get 2 agreements? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, yeah, so I'm going to try to do this politically correct because negotiations are confidential, so you can't really share the process where they are. However, what I can say is that I'm just going to be bringing an information item to Cabinet within the next day or 2, and then I'll be providing a confidential upgrade or briefing if AOC wants to the members to actually tell them where they are. What I will say, Madam Chair, is we're really close and we're a lot farther along than I thought we'd be. And if things aren't done in this government, it'll be really early in the next government. But that's all I'm going to say at this point without going further into that. But I am willing to brief committee at any time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Premier. Member for Frame Lake.
I can hardly wait. Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I look forward to some good news on that front and getting more information. So I guess the next topic is where are we at with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People? It was a mandate commitment to do some work on this, and just can the minister kind of describe where we're at? Recognizing that there's also a special committee that tabled an interim report on this topic. So thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel like I've already briefed that member on this item, but for the public, absolutely. We are, again, another exciting piece of work that we're looking at. This work was done with the Council Leaders Table. It wasn't easy. You know, it took a lot of work, and not everybody's on board. The majority are on board. This work will be bringing forward a legislative bill, what's it called? Bill, in this session. I think we'd already did the proposal. Just a proposal? Give me the right term there, Martin.
Yeah, the proposal.
Legislative proposal in this session. Because we recognize that committee has for 120 days to take it on the road. We're at the end of the assembly. We only have a short amount of time. So we're going to work as close as we can with committee. That is another commitment. I don't know if we've usually done that, but I think it's important we work together to get this across the line if it's going to happen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Premier. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So there's a big difference between a legislative proposal and a bill. Are we actually going to get a bill? Because the legislative proposal is usually pretty high level, shared with regular MLA, so there can be some, you know, reaction, initial input. But are we going to get a bill? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for asking for the clarification. That's what I was hoping to get. We are going to have a draft bill before this session is finished. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. Well, that could be good news. We'll see. But I want to encourage the Premier, the department. I think there's going to need to be a lot of public education, communications work around this. I know that MLAs have been looking at this, how other jurisdictions have attempted to deal with this, heard from some academics, so on, some, you know, Indigenous government leaders. That's all great stuff, but I think there's a real big need for some public education and well-crafted education, or sorry, communications materials. Is that something that the department is working on right now as well? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Absolutely, there is going to need to be a lot of communication and a lot of explaining to the public. I'm actually quite proud of the work that this Legislative Assembly has done on this work. Instead of other jurisdictions have done it, the federal government's done it, and BC has done it, but in my understanding, I know the federal government didn't consult with us. These things weren't done at the amount of consultation that we've actually done in the Northwest Territories. So the biggest thing the proudest thing I am for this work is that it was co-drafted with Indigenous governments. It wasn't for Indigenous governments, it is by Indigenous governments. So yes, Madam Chair, we have a lot of education to do, and I'd really appreciate actually, because I know the member has experience, if he wants to meet with me at any time after to talk about what he thinks we should do in communications, I'd be more than willing to hear that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm going to take the Premier up on that offer. Thanks.
All right. So are there any further questions under Indigenous and Intergovernmental Affairs? Seeing none. Indigenous and Intergovernmental Affairs. Where am I? Executive and Indigenous Affairs, Indigenous and Intergovernmental Affairs. Operation Expenditure Summary 2023-2024. Main estimate $7,515,000. Does committee agree? Thank you. There are additional information items on page 141 to 143. Are there any questions? Member for Frame Lake.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I want to ask about the budget or the funding allocation for the Status of Women Council, found on page 141. And I think we'd heard earlier that a number of NGOs have received forced growth increases in their funding, and that doesn't appear to be well, maybe that is the case for the Status of Women Council, but can Premier speak to that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have it right with me. Maybe you can find if you have it. I do know that within the last year's budget, there was an increase to both the Status of Women Council and the Native Women's Association. I do know that we're also doing the work with the NGOs, and so I'm assuming that some of that will be taken into consideration. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And if we can get that commitment to get that in to members, that would be great. Member for Frame Lake?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. So, well, I'm just looking at, page 141 and the contributions from the Government of the Northwest Territories. In 21-22, the actuals were 582, then it went down to 444, and it stayed there. So why was it higher in 21-22? Maybe there was some extra funding somewhere, but it doesn't look like they've actually received any kind of an increase. Forced growth, cost of living, inflation running at 6.3%. What's happening here? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Madam Premier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask Lauren if she wants to expand on it, but my understanding is that the contributions are from the whole of the GNWT. It's not just from the executive, so sometimes agencies like Justice, an example with this one, will give money, and then, but it might be for a short-term contract, so that's showing, but it's not longer term. But Madam Chair, if I can turn it to Lauren.
Ms. Alexandra?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as some additional funding from the department, there was additional funding provided to the Status of Women Council to support their engagement on the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls engagement. So that's some additional funding that the department provided.
Okay.
Member for Frame Lake?
Okay, thanks for that. So I take it then, though, that there is no increased funding for the Status of Women Council for 23-24. That's what the numbers show. Why is there no forced growth increase for this NGO, but there was for others? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll have to get back to the member. I do know that within the term of this government, there was an increase to both of the organizations, so we'll get back to them and let them know what that was. But again, we're just still at the process of doing the work with other organizations, so it's work that needs to be ongoing. But we will commit to getting back to you when the last increase was and exactly what it was, how much it was.
Thank you. Member for Frame Lake?
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. I guess I don't think I can ask any more questions. I'm going to make a statement. I think the Status of Women should have had an increase, forced growth, like the other NGOs. Maybe that's clear, because that's not what the numbers here show on the page. And I think we need to be more consistent in how we treat NGOs across the board in our forced growth increases. And that's all I have. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member. Are there any additional comments to the information items on page 141 and 143? Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also agree that the work of the Status of Women is super important, and I'm just wondering if the Premier can speak to the process for hiring an executive director. It's my understanding that that position has been empty for quite a while, and if the department could speak to what's happening there, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Status of Women Council is an arm's length. It's not, the GNWT does not oversee them and tell them what to do. They provide reports through them. There is an act for them, but they really govern their own. So, Madam Chair, I'm not sure. I don't even know why the last executive director left. I do know that it's not for the GNWT to determine their executive director. That's a process that they do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Premier. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think I said that the department was responsible for it. I asked what was happening with the fact that there hasn't been an executive director there. Given the importance of the work and that we are funding them from the GNWT to some degree, what does the department plan to do with the fact that there is nobody leading that organization? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that we can send a letter asking them an email asking them what their process, where they are with the process, and we'll provide an update to committee. Like I said, Madam Chair, it's not something that we take too much. I don't even know, like I said, I think it's only been a month or two that the position's been open, but I could be incorrect. And those positions are often hard to get. They're not, executive directors aren't a dime a dozen, so. But as soon as we will reach out, we'll try to find out what's going on, and then we'll submit an email or let all members know what's going on with that position. Thank you.
Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just comment that I find it quite concerning that nobody seems to be aware that this is happening in the Premier's office. This position has been empty for months now, not just one. I think almost at least since the fall. My question then is, given that NGOs are often underfunded for, for wages and benefits, etc., given that we're only contributing $444,000 to this organization, how does the GNWT expect an NGO like this to attract any sort of good quality people to work for them if we're not going to be properly, or they're not being properly compensated? Can the Premier speak to whether or not we're going to bump this money back up, at least to the pandemic level? Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is, yes, we give the 444, but the federal government also gives $1 million, Madam Chair. If the Chair wants to, I do believe the Minister of Status of Women does know a little bit more on the Executive Director position if we wanted to turn it to her, if you're okay with that, Madam Chair.
I'll turn to Minister of Status of Women.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, so there were some challenges, I understand, in terms of the staffing that at the Status of Women over the last several months, and the Gender Equity Unit was able to provide some supports during that period of time. It is the board of the Status of Women that does do their own hiring and does manage their own human resources process. So the role that I would have on behalf of the GNWT as the Minister responsible for Status of Women is to appoint the board, and then they do their own hiring. So I certainly can reach out to them for an update as to where they're at. But they, as I said, to the extent that there was some challenges with staffing, we were able to support them, but it is their role. And then with respect to, I think the member was asking what the funding would be. I mean, obviously the main estimates are before members right now. And they are not, while not to certainly at all take away from the importance of the work that they do, they are an advocacy-based organization and not one providing essential services, and so they may not then necessarily have been subject to the same forced growth process that NGOs that do provide essential government services, for which the GNWT would have to step in, would then be subject to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I have a clarification on where this $1 million from the federal government is? I only see $595,000 here. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister of Status of Women.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that was funding that came through. I believe it was announced by MP MacLeod roughly a year ago now, and it was, I can't speak to the nature of exactly. I believe it was probably some sort of project funding, but again, it was federal dollars. It is not the only external funding that Status of Women receives. They certainly receive other program dollars through other federal departments, and I can't speak to that entirely. I believe, however, I can commit to providing members with a copy of their annual report, which would then give a fuller picture of the entirety of the funds that they have from all sources. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Great Slave.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the clarification around the essential services, although I do want to note that the Status of Women does do a lot of other work that is quite key, whether or not it's actually deemed essential by the government. I know that they've been doing a lot of work with like RCMP and analyzing things around domestic violence, etc. Can the Minister or the Premier answer whether or not the Gender Equity Unit is actually being positioned to replace the Status of Women, given that there's more funding there than there seems to be to the Status of Women? Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start, and then the Minister of Status of Women might want to expand on it. At no time, so I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question quite right, but the Gender Equity Unit is not to take the place of the Status of Women. It's totally different. The gender equity work is to work with the missing and murdered Indigenous women around that kind of work that we're working on. But at no time have we had any discussions about taking over and replacing the status woman. Madam Chair, I'm not sure if the Minister of Status Women wanted to expand or if she's okay with that, or, but through you.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add, Minister of Status of Women?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Only to further echo what the Premier's already said. Gender Equity Unit, just to be very clear, replaces what was formerly known as the Women's Advisory Office, which had exactly one person working in it, which is not a whole lot of horsepower to deal with when you have the breadth of matters that come through. As the Premier said, missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls, and the response to the National Action Plan comes through gender equity, as is work in terms of training departments on gender-based analysis, as well as work in terms of intimate partner violence, and there's multi-department initiatives that touch on both of those things that then have to run through or do run through. Also, the campaign schools are running through this division. So there's a lot of work happening there that is separate and apart from what the status of women are doing, and certainly, as Premier said, not any intention to step on their toes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member for Great Slate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is what this seems to me, and I hear a lot of what the description about the Gender Equity Unit does actually seem to me to quite overlap with some of the work that is being done by the status of women. So again, just like our shelter situation where we put it on NGOs that can't afford to pay proper wages to do work, it seems like this is another one of those types of situations where we underfund an NGO to do work, but then we have a parallel department or other department doing some of that work. Those people are making more money. They're getting better benefits and wages than the people that are working for the NGO or the arm's length entity. And as a result, we are seeing a mass exodus of those NGOs and those non-governmental groups to the government. So maybe just more of a comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on the additional items on page 141 and 143? Member for Cam Lake.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just while we're talking about the status of women, I believe it was last summer there was engagement done on the Status of Women Act, and I'm wondering what the expected timeline is on that act and if we'll see a bill in the life of this Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do know that the bill will be coming in this Assembly, but I'd like to transfer to the Status of Women Minister, who will know the timing better than me. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister responsible for Status of Women.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I think the Premier's given, oh, no, hang on, Madam Chair. I may actually have it here handy. If I don't, I can certainly provide it, but Premier is correct. It is going to be coming in the life of this Assembly. I think this session, Madam Chair.
This sitting. This sitting? Okay. Just to clarify. Member for Cam Lake?
No, that's excellent. We look forward to seeing it and working with Cabinet on it. Thank you.
All right. Are there any additional questions? Seeing none, members, thank you. Please return now to to the departmental summary found on page 119. Revenue summary information items on page 120. No, I will now call the departmental summary, executive and Indigenous Affairs, operation expenditures, total department 2023-2024 main estimates, $21,994,000. Member for Frame Lake.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I move that this committee defer further consideration of the estimates for the Department of Executive and Indigenous Affairs at this time. Merci, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The motion. Just a moment while the motion is being distributed. All right, members, the motion is in order. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. Consideration of Department of Executive and Indigenous Affairs 2023-2024 main estimates, operating expenditures, total department is deferred. Thank you to the Premier, and thank you to the witnesses for appearing before us. Sergeant at Arms, please escort the witnesses from the chamber. What is the wish of committee? Mr. O'Reilly.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. I move that the chair rise and report progress.
Thank you. The motion is in order. The motion is non-debatable. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. I will now rise and report progress.
Order. May I please have the report of Committee of the Whole, Member for Inuvialuktun Lakes.
Mr. Speaker, your committee has been considering table document 813-19 brackets 2 and would like to report progress with 2 motions adopted. And Mr. Speaker, I move that the report of the Committee of the Whole be concurred with. Thank you.
Member for Inuvialuktun Lakes, do we have a seconder? Member for Mumfui, all those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Minister responsible for justice.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Inuvik-Boot Lake, that Bill 57, Miscellaneous Statute Law Amendment Act 2022, be read for the third time. And Mr. Speaker, I request a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Motion is in order to the motion. Question has been called. The Minister has requested a recorded vote. All those in favor, please rise.
The member for Hay River North, the member for Inuvik Twin Lakes, the member for Hay River South, the member for Tabacha, the member for Cam Lake, the member for Frame Lake, the member for Yellowknife North, the member for Tunadawaladay, the member for Montfouille, the member for Great Slave, the member for Nahende, the member for Yellowknife South, the member for Satu, the member for Range Lake, the member for Inuvik-Boot Lake, the member for Yellowknife Centre.
All those opposed, please rise. All those abstaining, please rise. The results of the recorded vote, 16 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. The motion is carried. Bill 57 has had third reading. Third reading of bills. Third reading of bills. Mr. Clerk, orders of the day.
Orders of the day for Tuesday, February 28th, 2023, 1:30 p.m. Prayer, minister statements, member statements, recognition of visitors in the gallery, reports of committees on the review of bills, reports of standing and special committees, returns to oral questions, acknowledgements, oral questions, written questions, returns to written questions, replies to commissioner's address, petitions, tabling of documents, notices of motion, motions, notices of motion for first reading of bills, second reading of bills, Bill 64, consideration in committee of the whole of bills and other matter, Bill 23, Bill 29, Bill 56, and Bill 61. Committee Report 40-19-2, Minister Statement 264-19-2, Table Documents 681, 6894, and 813-19-2. Report of Committee of the Whole, third reading of bills, orders of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This House stands adjourned until Tuesday, February 28th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m.